And I believe we have 3 students.
Two students this evening.
You want to come right in the middle there so everybody can see you, and if you'll lead us in the pledge, that'd be great. Okay. Want me to start you off? I know. I messed up on the national anthem one time. It happens. Okay, I'll start you off, and you can go. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the superintendent has a few things to say if he wants to. Could you wait one moment? We have. You guys can sit down, Superintendent. We're reversing it today.
So I just wanted to take a minute to recognize these 2 students. We have 2 students. The Sanborn Regional High School Music Department is proud to announce the acceptance of John Putnam, a sophomore from Newton, who was accepted into the New Hampshire All-State Band on trombone, which is not a very easy thing to do. And Erin Gillespie, who's a sophomore from Kingston, she was accepted into the New Hampshire All-State Treble Chorus as a soprano. So we do have a couple of certificates for you here to say thanks. Chair Broderick will give those to you, and thanks for coming to lead us in the pledge.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Minutes. Make a motion for the minutes from January 3, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Ma'am?
I'm just waiting for the 1/11 special meeting minutes.
Okay. So, all in favor? Corey?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, make a motion for the non-public minutes of January 3, 2018.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay, Larry, you just seconded.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Are there minutes from the? I don't see them. That's why I want to make sure we have. Oh, there they are. Further. Okay. Documents. Distribution of the documents. I don't see any. Manifested. Oh, they're over there? Okay, working around this way. All right. Any resignations, nominations?
I don't think so, no.
It's only one page of documents?
Yes, that is just the payroll manifest. The other one was approved electronically given the rescheduling of tonight's meeting.
Do you want this or this one?
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. Yes, I'm just getting ready for my report.
Superintendent's report.
All right, so I have a few things this evening to share with you. I wanted to take a moment to recognize Andrew Jelena. He couldn't make it this evening, but I want to read this short article to you about Andrew. The best high school automotive students in New Hampshire competed in a skills challenge on Saturday, and when the dust settled, Aaron Wessling and Andrew Jelena took home top honors for the Seacoast School of Technology. Sponsored by the New Hampshire Automobile Dealers Association and Toyota, the 2018 New Hampshire Tech Skills Competition was held at Lakes Region Community College and featured a 2-person team from 10 schools throughout the Granite State. For successfully and accurately diagnosing 4 problems with the 2015 Camry, Jelena and Wessling each received $2,000 scholarships to the New Hampshire Community College Automotive Program of their choice, a trophy, and the opportunity to represent New Hampshire later this year in the National Automotive Technology Contest in New York City. I just think it's so important to recognize, as they said later on in this article, how awesome that is. So the kids are very excited, and we had an opportunity to meet Andrew the other day at the leadership team. The administrators were meeting, and Mr. Stack invited him in. It was fantastic. Great to see this student fully engaged and excited about his future and talking about how he's already receiving potential job offers, let alone scholarships. So we're very excited about him. I wanted to let you know that at the Memorial School, the elementary held its CARES recognition ceremony and distributed awards to 32 students in grades K through 5 who exemplified CARES attributes. Parents were in attendance. Teachers distributed progress reports for the second trimester on Monday to all families. At the Bakey School, kindergarten students have started a kindness challenge. There's a video here that I can share with the board for you all to watch, and their interim reports for school will be distributed Friday, January 26th. Grade 5 students are completing the Geography Bee competition this week, and grade 3 students are currently studying immigration and preparing for the annual Ellis Island simulation experience on February 20th. All board members are welcome to attend. At the middle school, we had an annual spelling bee and is pleased to announce that Tessa Holt will represent Sanborn Regional Middle School at the state spelling bee. The runner-up was Connor Mallon. The 8th grade science is currently conducting their PACE assessment and have tasked students to create a hut to help reduce heat transfer and protect penguins in South Africa. 6th grade students will be traveling on a field trip to Strawberry Bank Museum on February 14th for 4 sessions. Hearth cooking / stove cooking, the Black Heritage Trail, guided house tours, and ice skating for their upcoming math performance assessment. I'm not quite sure how all that ties together, but I'm sure, Michael, do you have any idea how all that ties together? I'm not really sure, but it sounds fun. The high school, PTO, is hosting a financial aid planning night on February 12th at 6:30 in the library. Aaron Gillespie and John Putnam made the New Hampshire All-State Music Festival, which I just shared with you. The Student Council will be running the annual Winter Carnival Week, February 19th through the 23rd. Here are the themes for the week. Monday is Tourist Day. That should be interesting. Tuesday is the seasons. Anyone can dress as any season. Mr. Stack, I hope you have a limit on summer. Thank you very much. Wednesday is Country versus Country Club. Seniors and freshmen are country, and the sophomores are country. The juniors and sophomores are country club. Thursday is the theme day with the seniors in the 2000s, juniors in the 50s, sophomores in the 80s, and freshmen are the Jurassic period. Friday is the class shirt color day, seniors yellow, juniors purple, sophomores pink, and freshmen orange. Sounds like fun. At the SAU office, I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge Mr. Trammell. The district office recently received a $15,000 check / grant that was to be used for professional development from the Performance Assessment for Competency Education grant proposal that Mr. Trammell wrote. Mr. Trammell also submitted a grant proposal in the amount of $50,000 for infrastructure and safety. We have been notified that we have been awarded $40,000 in funding with a $10,000 district match. This money will be used to install a communication system, including 2-way radios and a repeater on the Newton campus. I just want to take a minute to acknowledge how hard Mr. Trammell has been working to raise money for the district while doing all of his other duties. And I want to be clear that, from my opinion, the funding for the infrastructure grant really didn't even fall in his job description. He just took it on because he knew that no one else could do it right now, and so he did it, and he did a great job. The district office is in negotiations with the commissioner's office at the New Hampshire Department of Education to enter into a 3-year professional development program to develop a personalized learning ecosystem in the Sanborn Regional School District. This program is targeted at assisting districts to realize the goals outlined in the state regulations for competency-based learning. We'll have more information about that soon, but it has a lot to do with the idea around having students move when ready. So I just wanted to say thanks to Mr. Trammell for all of his hard work, and this grant money is a significant savings to the district. I want to give everyone a quick update on the snow day backpacks because a board member had asked a question about Timberlane and having snow day backpacks so that they don't have to make up snow days. The administration met and discussed snow day backpacks at length. The group is not in favor of snow day backpacks, and they wanted me to give you a number of reasons. Number one, the monitoring of the work is very difficult. So it's hard to monitor when students work and when they do not work, and when staff are working and when they're not working. The rigor of the work for snow day backpacks, as observed by administrators in our district who either have folks that they know who teach in other districts that have these, or have children in other districts that experience this, did not feel that the snow day backpacks were rigorous at all. Also, there's an issue with the relevance to the current work. So it really, typically, a pre-planned bag is busy work, and that is a concern for our team. Another concern is that there's a large burden on the staff to do additional planning for snow days. You don't know when you're going to have a snow day, so it's really hard to accurately plan that. We are set up as a district to track our hours throughout the course of the year, not the days. So Mr. Trammell and I, frankly, Mr. Trammell spent quite a bit of time analyzing the number of hours that we've used so far, and we're still in really good shape at this point. But I hesitate to say exactly how it's going to come out in the end because we haven't even hit February yet. So I think that's really important to just hold on and figure that out as we get closer to the end of March. And I just wanted to mention from a social and emotional perspective, particularly for our K6 and 7 students, a snow day is a really nice break for little kids to have a day to play outside. And that's what I think is best for them at that time of the year. We'll get the academic work done, and if we add days on at the end of the year, we'll get it done then. So I just wanted you all to know that the administrative team did discuss this at length, and if the board requests that we take a look at this more, we certainly would be willing to do that, but I just wanted everyone to know that the team did not feel that would be beneficial. So I also wanted to give everyone an update on SB 193. SB 193 is kind of controversial. And so the information that I'm going to share is factual in nature. A community member did ask that I give an update on SB 193. And I do think it's good for us to be aware. It's unforeseen what the financial impacts are going to be for us. It was heard before the House Finance Committee on Tuesday, January 16, 2018. SB 193 seeks to create a voucher system whereby state adequacy aid is directed away from public schools. The testimony at the hearing offered by individuals both in support and in opposition to SB 193 stated that approximately half of all New Hampshire students would be eligible to receive a voucher under the bill. The bill does not currently have a fiscal note attached to it, and there are lots of estimates and numbers being thrown around, including a stabilization grant that has not been, it will call for partial reimbursement to school districts that lose a certain amount of state aid, but it's hard to anticipate the fiscal impact for our district because we don't know how many students would go and how many might come here. So I don't know the answer to this question. I just simply know that this type of work can be very challenging because it makes budgeting very difficult. You don't know what you're going to have in surplus or in reductions. So I just think it's important for us to recognize that some of the numbers being thrown around for our district are in the $30,000 to $40,000 range of money leaving, but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't have students who wanted to come here either. I don't know. I thought I'd give you a quick update on the NESDEC study. Michelle's worked hard on that, and I wanted to let you all know that we did get a proposal from them, and the demographics and facilities study proposed by NESDEC would include a review of student enrollment projections with demographic enhancement, a review of facilities space to determine capacities and suitability for anticipated use, and a review and appraisal of the present and future educational needs in relation to the public school facilities in the Sanborn Regional School District. The product of this study would provide a review of possible alternative grade level configurations, potential facility modification, closure and or construction, and possible alternatives, and possible alternative uses of the school facilities in order to support the educational program and make optimal use of space. The total fixed cost to the Sanborn Regional School District for the study detailed in their proposal would be as follows. An enrollment projection and demographic analysis $6,520, and the best use of facilities analysis $15,328 for a total of $21,848, which by the way is quite a bit less than what we thought it would be. We get a discount, so that's good.
Did they give us a date on when that study could be completed?
I'll get you.
We didn't ask for that information yet. We just wanted to get a proposal of would it encompass the realm of what we wanted and how much would the cost be. Do you know anything I don't know?
They had provided in the initial response a range of time that it would take to complete the report, but we've not asked them for a start date, so
Right. What was the range, do you know off the top of your head, the range of time?
Can't recall.
Okay, thank you.
You could send it to the board in an email for informational purposes.
It was in one of the prior board packets. We sent it.
I am, sir.
Corey, you look like you had a question?
Well, I just had a comment. I think Brian Stack had actually about the blizzard bags. There's nothing in state legislature either. I think Brian Stack had mentioned that earlier this past week on his blog. And that's also just a simple, subtle reminder to the community who's interested in this. Kearsarge Regional had tried introducing this back in 2009, and we're nearly 10 years later, and we still don't have the blizzard bag process. So it's not just our district, but there's a statewide lack of adoption for it too. So, saying just the record.
Just as are you done? Okay. Just as a practicality thing, from a former teacher upstairs here, education is dynamic; it's not static. You're covering a subject today is not the same subject you're going to be covering next week. I taught science. I might be covering the cell this week. Next snow day, I'll be covering osmosis or something. So you're going to lose your credibility very quickly when the kids realize this is probably just busy work. Unless you're going to, upgrade your blizzard pack at least weekly, you're creating yourself a real problem, because students, it's not stationary, it's not static, it moves along. So a blizzard pack you put together here is not going to have relevance later. You can make them and tweak them, but I'll tell you, to me, it would be a teacher nightmare. I don't know how many teachers agree with me or not, but I'm just saying I wouldn't want to have to come up with that and then every couple of weeks make a whole new one. My personal feeling. But anyway, okay, thank you, Superintendent. Committee reports, policy. Policy.
So our next meeting was scheduled for Feb 7th, but that's the deliberative night, so I believe we'll be rescheduling that meeting. We're still waiting for the report from the School Board Association. So we'll post on the website when our meeting will be, our next meeting.
I'm going to be talking about tonight what time we're going to come in for the deliberative session time, because that's the same night as the scheduled meeting for us. But we do have things like manifests and some other stuff, so we'll talk about it, about coming in a little bit earlier, certainly earlier than 7, but instead of 6:30, maybe 6, to do some of the administrative work we have to do. All right, so I'll be talking about that a little later. Okay, so that I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm done. Sure.
Okay. Education?
Yeah, EISA, Excellence in Student Achievement, met tonight, and we have a draft document, 1 page of defining student success. We have a mission statement. We have a list of skills, traits, and attributes students should master, and we also have some indicators. We're going to be circulating a survey asking the community what they would like to see under skills, traits, and attributes that students should master, and we'd also like to know what indicators they think would be valuable to measure moving forward before we actually bring a finalized document to the board. Our next meeting is February 21st, hopefully, and we may have a draft document by then.
I know a couple of these meetings, they just met tonight, so if you're not prepared to speak about them yet, I understand. I was just in 2 meetings, so if you just want to put it off for the next time, so you get your notes and everything, that's fine. But facilities? Finance? I'm sorry, Corey. Facilities?
Facilities, no, we did not meet.
Okay, good. Finance, again, we met tonight. It was really educational for 2 members.
Yeah, we, Pete Broderick and Jim Baker were in attendance, and the business administrator ran a tutorial for us on the state.
Did you say a dictorial?
Tutorial.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And on the state mandated formats for accounting for the school system. We went over various accounting codes and how they relate to the state manual and how they break them out into function and object in terms of being able to report them, and it's a requirement to report them according to how they specify it must be done. So basically it was to help us understand what's behind that and how it works. And it's a work in process.
Oh, is it a, okay, public relations, I know we're meeting Monday.
Public Relations is meeting Monday the 29th at 1 p.m. in the SAU office.
Personnel, we just met, do you wanna?
Yeah, personnel met tonight. We went over the organizational chart to better understand the structure for evaluations in the building, and it's an ongoing discussion. And our next meeting will be at 1 p.m. on Monday, March 5th.
SST, Corey?
Neither Mr. Ambrose or myself could attend Monday evening's meeting. There was acknowledgments at that meeting that we do know of actually some of the things that Mr. Ambrose described in his report relative to the automotive. That was being showcased and discussed that evening.
Seminary, Corey, anything?
Next meeting is next Wednesday, January 31st at 8:30. And we,
Is that 8:30 a.m.?
a.m., yes, and we hope to have the second appraisal ready for next Wednesday.
Budget.
The Budget Committee met on January 11th. They held a public hearing on the warrant articles. It was lightly attended by the community. I would estimate probably maybe 20 members of the community or so. There were, I counted 4 community members that gave some feedback to the Budget Committee regarding the budget. And a petitioner reviewed the warrant article on the hockey program as well. And there were some questions that were asked of him. The committee unanimously, by a vote of 7-0, approved of the budget amount that we have resolved on, and I can read it if you need me to. I have to look up where it is in my notes. The hockey warrant article was, they voted not to recommend by also a unanimous 0-7.
And I'll be talking about when the deliberative is at the end of the meeting. Okay, time for public comments. Public comments. Andy Oslo.
Sandy Rogers, Osterloh, Kingston resident. I just want to say thank you.
Okay. That's the board and the budget committee? Okay. We may talk about it at the deliberative session, the process for people who don't know, but it's been long. It's been pleasantly contentious at times, right? But we worked it out. Okay. Any other public comments? Old business. Assessment score questions.
Could I just, before Mr. Trammell presents, I just wanted to mention that we did get a number of very important questions, and all questions have a right to be answered. We focused tonight because of the depth of some questions that weren't necessarily questions about the data, that were more about educational programs. We're going to save the educational programming stuff for a future meeting. But he is going to answer the data specific questions tonight. So, but I want everyone to know if you submitted a question, we'll keep working on it and figure out a format and a time to answer those questions.
So I know that so I thank you, Mr. Ambrose, for that introduction. So there were a number of questions that we received that weren't directly related to the data per se. And I want to tell folks that compiling the data for the questions that the board asked was an incredibly time-consuming process. I'm not sure if folks understood that the questions that were asked, the responses were not available in the data that we have. In other words, there was a lot of data that had to be combed through. For example, when SAT scores are released, they're not released by town. Right? We get a batch Excel spreadsheet. In many cases, we have to manipulate that data, and in some cases, actually go in kid by kid and look up their town on our student information system and enter that data. Mr. Broderick.
Could I ask a question? It's just,
Sure.
it's the word, manipulate that data. Could you clarify what you mean by manipulated data? No offense meant, but.
No, I understand
Yeah.
completely. So the data that we get is just raw data. It's just numbers and kids, SACID numbers in some cases, a student assigned state ID. We have to add to that data because we don't have fields in the data that was released to us. So for example, in the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, the 8th grade SBAC scores, I did a data dump from the state system, and I got a field with students' SACID numbers, their first name, last name, and their score for reading and their score for math. The question that was asked, however, was, can you give us the SBAC scores and student performance by town? So I had to go in to that data with that data dump from the state and create another field called town, and had to literally look up every student's hometown. And in that particular case, for example, there was a bit of a challenge because we don't own the Fremont data until the students from Fremont enter our school. So it required another step of contacting the Ellis School, asking the Ellis School for their data set, and then waiting for them to compile their data and give it to me so I could then sort it by town. So what I'm saying is that I want you to understand that this was an incredible amount of labor that went into this, not just by myself, but the entire guidance department. Another example I will give you is that there was a question that stated, if we had the draft ESSA guidelines in place for college and career readiness, how would our students have performed over the course of the last 3 years? Many of those indicators, because they're in draft form even at the state level, we don't have compiled in any one place. So our entire guidance staff printed off all 160 some odd transcripts of last year's graduates and had to comb through transcript by transcript looking for evidence of these 9 indicators, and literally creating a spreadsheet if the student had met an indicator, put an X in the box, and then having to do a tremendous amount of sorting to compile that data. So when I say manipulating the data, what I mean, Mr. Broderick, is that the data that we compiled was not available in the format that was requested. So in some cases, we had to add fields and do a lot of manual labor to enter data into those fields. Okay. So the first question, yes, Mr.
I
Ambrose.
just want to be clear. Mr. Tamel and the staff are not complaining about giving you the information that you're asking for. He's simply saying that if we have to balance giving information in a format that people would like to see with the regular day-to-day work that needs to occur in the organization. So it's just important to recognize when you're asking a question to think about, it might be good for us all in a learning lesson through this process, which I've learned a few things, is to ask, before we ask, can I have it this way, or could we do it this way, is it already created that way, and what would it take to get it? Do you know what I'm saying? So it really, I wanted to see myself what the 9 indicators of ESSA would give us for information. So I went to guidance and sat with them and asked them myself to give us that. And they were fine with it, and they did a great job with it, but it did take quite a bit of time. So I'm just simply saying that if we could try to there are times of the year when we can do more work with data than others. So in other words, it's a little bit easier in the summer to sit down and look at a bunch of data and take a day and do it when we don't have the whole kids in the building and people doing things. And yeah, we'll work on a sequence for balance. But I just didn't want anyone to feel like we're happy to share information. We want you to feel supported and that you have the information that you need.
I appreciate that, Mr. Ambrose, and if the board in any way interpreted that my explanation as complaining, that was not intended. I was simply trying to state that, in fact, had the board meeting happened last Wednesday as it was scheduled, I probably would not have been able, in the 2 weeks that I was given, to compile this data. The fact that the board meeting was postponed to this week actually helped us because I just received some of this data on Monday. So I just wanted folks to know that, as Mr. Ambrose said, certainly your appreciation of the work that went in is outstanding, and I appreciate that. So the first question, why are Sanborn math and English testing results so often below the state averages no matter the test? So in communicating with and looking at data and communicating with the administrators and Mr. Ambrose, we felt pretty strongly that on a year-by-year basis, our scores are often just above or just below the state average, specifically in grades 3 through 8. In looking at the data, however, where we have routinely fallen below the state average on a consistent basis is in the area of high school mathematics. That's not a surprise to the board. The board has been talking with us about that for a number of years. We've tried a number of different solutions to try to improve that, and we continue to be creative and innovative in attacking that problem. We do feel, however, that there's no one solution to improve results on standardized tests, which is why that under Mr. Ambrose's leadership, we're in the process of developing a multi-directional approach to attacking the problem, including but not limited to, we have 8 things that we're working on simultaneously. Curriculum instruction and assessment adjustments.
Can we ask questions now as we go, or do you want to wait till the end?
Say it again, Mr. Broderick.
Can we ask questions now, or you want to wait till all the questions are good? My curiosity is, we have a math coordinator in the lower grade, but I don't believe we have one in the high school. Am I correct on that?
That is correct.
And it's coincidental, maybe, perhaps, who knows, that that's where our test scores seem to be the lowest.
It's possible. Math. That's actually a second question. That's okay, question number 2. We will get there. All right. Opportunities for students to practice standardized testing formats. Those of you who've been on the board for a couple of years know that we went to a one-on-one model for technology. So now we have computers in the form of Chromebooks in every student's hands, at least at the high school level. In the middle school, they have access to them on a daily basis, but it's at the classroom level. And in the lower grades, up past grade 3, below grade 3, we're using iPads. But the intent there, particularly at the grades 9 through 12, is we also implemented for the first time ever school-wide access to SAT prep. So we recognize that our students are at a bit of a disadvantage because many of them have not participated in an SAT prep program. Back in the old days, it was very cost prohibitive. It may be $300 to $400 for an SAT prep program, and it also, many of them happened after school hours when some of our kids are engaged in music programs and athletic activities. And so giving them access to SAT prep during the school day is critical. Last year, we dipped our toes in the water a little bit with it. This year, however, we're engaged in a full implementation. That program is through the College Board. It's called Khan Academy, and students do practice on both mathematics and English, the reading and evidence-based writing. Professional development for teachers. Mr. Ambrose has been talking about this since the beginning of the budget cycle. Our desire to use of data to inform and change instruction. Working with parents and community members to develop an achievement mindset. That is part of this program that Dr. Brown mentioned earlier around identifying student success and setting the target for kids and showing them what the indicators are for that success. Enhancing our guidance programs for students with emotional and mental health issues. Addressing substance abuse and risky behaviors by students. And continuing to enhance early career and early college experiences to drive aspirations. Many of these really fit under a whole child approach to improving teaching and learning. Embedded within there are issues of health and wellness. So it's not just academic issues, but it's also addressing the whole child and what that particular student's needs might be. Question 2, and this goes to Mr. Broderick's comment. We have had a math coordinator for 10 years. From reviewing results of the New Hampshire Department of Ed website back to 2006, it appears that math results have not improved. What impact has the position had? If this position is to be continued, what changes will be made so that this position results in improved math test scores? The continued development and evolution of the mathematics coordinator position has had a positive impact on student achievement at the lower grades. Our test scores have stayed the same or have improved, while the rigor of the standardized testing has increased. What has been disappointing, again, is the carryover in mathematics scores from the K-8 program to the high school. Our mathematics coordinator has received a tremendous wealth of training and expertise in both the Everyday Math program and the OGAP program. OGAP is Ongoing Assessment Project. It's a project out of Vermont. She is widely considered to be an expert in both areas, and she shares that expertise with teachers on a daily basis. On a side note, I had a conversation today with our administrative team and asked them for comments about how the mathematics coordinator position is being used in their schools. And they were universal in stating it's the most critical aspect of professional development that they have in their buildings on a day-to-day basis. Their teachers receive tremendous professional development from our math coordinator, K through 8. The following steps may help with math achievement. And Mr. Ambrose has mentioned one of these items. Number 2, increase the number of coaches and interventionists. So this is particularly at the lower grades, where we want to attack literacy and numeracy with targeted assistance and math coaching and literacy coaching. And also take a look at whether or not there are lessons that could be learned from our implementation of math coaching K through 8 that might be expanded to the high school.
I would just like to add that I take responsibility for the slide. I've been working hard on figuring out what's going on with math coaching at the request of both the BudCom and some board members. And what I've seen so far in the conversations that I've had with people and in the analysis that I've been doing of this work is that the person is spread too thin. You can't be in 3 buildings and work with 3 staffs and work with 3 different, just the grade levels and the scope and sequence of the curriculum alone from pre-K to 8 is so huge that it makes it really difficult to specialize. So in districts that I've worked in that have had very effective coaching for literacy, the coach works at a pre-K to 2 band, a 3 to 6 or 3 to 5 band, and then a 6 to 8 band, because they have to know the intricacies of all the curriculum and the assessments before they can coach instruction. So the fact that our scores have stayed or have gone a little bit above shows that there's good work going on. Frankly, the opinion at this point is that, same as literacy, because we have no coaching in literacy, that there's not enough.
Question 3 is to provide a breakdown of the past 2 years of SAT results per the following: college bound, trade and career bound, military bound, and other. This is one of the areas that, and I'm not sure which board members submitted this, but this is one of the areas that we can provide 1 year of data for, but we cannot provide 2. The reason for that is the students who took the SAT, school day SAT last year, are this year's current seniors, and they haven't yet declared or determined whether or not they're going to 4-year school, 2-year school, military. If you walked into the main atrium on your way into the building, you probably noticed across from the downstairs bathrooms, the wall covered with blue and yellow paper. So the blue paper are the names of students in colleges for students who have been accepted. The yellow are for students who have declared and accepted, or actually declared that they're going to that university. I think there are only 3 or 4 out there that have actually declared. It's very early in the process. So in order to give you the information that you're asking for, we could only look at the graduating class of last year, because they're the only group that's gone through with that school day SAT. So here's the data. We've broken it down by 2-year college, 4-year college, military, folks who went directly into the employment, kids that fell into the other or unknown category. There were only 8 of them. Students who took dual enrollment, that is a college level course while they're in high school, and students who took no dual enrollment courses while in high school. And you can see the ELA and math scores, ELA in the first column, math in the second column. I do want to draw your attention to the asterisk. These are the school day SAT test scores. This means that this is the test that was given to juniors in March of their junior year. These are not necessarily, in fact, I will tell you they are probably not the SAT scores that are released to colleges, right? Students will have another 6 or 8 months to take the SAT, and those scores will go up. These are the scores of students who took it, the SAT test, in the junior year in March. That make sense? There is a follow-up question. In the past 2 years, please provide the number of students in dual enrollment and compare how they collectively did. So this is the same exact slide. The only thing different is I added the number of students who took dual enrollment courses last year, which was 46. So when you look at that dual enrollment category of 546 SAT for ELA and 525 SAT for math, that was 46 students, a little more than a third of our student body took a college course while in high school, and those are their scores.
I would just like to add that this helps us to identify, I like this question, because this helps us to identify the areas of improvement that we can work toward, which it looks to me like there is some truth to the idea that the students who are going into four-year college are doing really well, or relatively well, on their SAT scores compared to what the state expects for a benchmark. The students who are going to a two-year college, we probably, because it's an average, there's probably some who do fine and some who didn't do as well. And so I think that one thing guidance said when they were looking through this is that some kids, they were surprised at some of the kids that didn't have the SAT scores knowing the kid. So they were just surprised, and that leads me to think that having some conversations with those kids before the SAT test is a really important thing to do, right? So that would be the action step, is to like identify the kids that might be going to two-year college, figure out where their scores are on the PSAT, and use that data to target them for some extra instruction around test taking and give them a little bit of support. I mean, until the state changes the expectation that the SAT is an indicator for our success, which they're planning to do, we have to work on this, right? It's an important thing right now, because as we all know, our people's opinion of our community just is commonly a decision as to whether or not they buy a home here, and that is based on some of these scores that are reported publicly. But I do also just want to remind everyone that SAT scores were not designed to be a summative assessment, and it is not working. And that's why they're looking at different options, and that's why No Child Left Behind is going away, and ESSA has replaced it with more local control over what determines effectiveness. We just haven't, the wave of that change is just starting to come from the federal level to the state level.
The next question is, please provide the most recent 8th grade Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium results broken down by town. What you see here is a slide. I apologize, it's a little bit small, but the first line says total number of students without Fremont. So in grade 8 last year, there were 132 students in the Sanborn Regional School District. Total number of students with Fremont, 189. Total number of students from Kingston only was 76. Total number of students from Newton only was 55. There was one student from the town of Brentwood who attended our school district last year, and there were 57 students from the Fremont School District. You see their scores in ELA. The number of students in Kingston who scored a 3 or a 4, that's what would be considered proficient. 69% of students from Kingston scored a 3 or 4 in ELA, 71% in Newton, and 70% in Fremont. Pretty darn close. I mean, we're talking about a percentage point will mean one kid, right? So one kid either side of proficient or not proficient would make that difference. In math, the percentage of students who received a 3 or 4 from Kingston was 55%, 51% in Newton, and 46% in Fremont. A little bit more variation there, but still relatively close. The next question is, have PSATs been taken yet for each applicable grade, and what are the results? The answer is yes, they have been taken. They were taken for the first time this year by grade 9 students. We have been taking historically grade 10 and 11. So this data is grade 9, and I will be sharing this on the district website, by the way, if you have difficulty seeing this. You see there the total number of students in Sanborn, how many were from Fremont, how many were from Kingston, and how many were from Newton. The interesting statistic we added was males and females. You're going to see something which is pretty startling in the upper grades. There is a huge disparity in the number of females to males in the district at certain grade levels. But these are their grade 9 PSAT tests. The PSAT test is linked directly to the SAT. So as students receive a score in PSAT, if you can see there the English evidence-based reading and writing, that's what EBRW is. It's essentially the ELA score, 417 for Sanborn and 414 in math. You're going to see, depending on the student's level of practice on the Khan Academy and also their participation in their normal curriculum, can be a growth of anywhere between 30 and 60 points or higher per year. So you would expect to see those scores move up, which you will see here in grade 10. So you can see there's a relatively good sized jump. We have 161 students in grade 10, and you see a little bit of a disparity growing in the number of females and males. We have more in this case, I can't read that top number.
161? Oh, 84.
84 to 77. So you can see in grade 10 there is a jump across the board. In grade 11, this one is the one that's most indicative, because in the same school year, this test was taken in October. The SAT, school day SAT, will be taken in the spring, so maybe 4 or 5 months of instruction will have taken place. Also 4 or 5 months of practice on Khan Academy. We should expect another jump between this PSAT test and the SAT test in the spring. And you can see there a large disparity between females and males. And it's interesting that their performance is different. Question 7. If we had the proposed Department of Ed 10-point ranking system, how would that look for the past 3 years? So what this refers to is Mr. Ambrose and I were at a New Hampshire School Administrators Association meeting at the beginning of the year, and there was a draft proposal put on the board, and we snuck a snapshot of it with our iPhones. This was a draft that the state of New Hampshire was sending to the federal government as part of our ESSA application. ESSA is Every Student Succeeds Act. It's federal legislation, and every state must file a report with the federal government, U.S. Department of Education, of how we're going to meet the standards required under ESSA, federal law. Yes, Mr. Ambrose.
I just want to point out that the biggest change from No Child Left Behind, which made all these standardized tests so important to communities, and ESSA, is that that requirement has been backed off significantly. That the local control for what we choose for assessments within the state and community is much higher in ESSA, because they recognize that the model is failing of only using standardized tests to assess the effectiveness of public schools. It's a component of the success. So I think that this is positive, because it gives a wider range of options for students to demonstrate their learning.
And just another comment, this is not only the state of New Hampshire or the federal government that backs this, but colleges and universities are struggling to use SAT to predict student success. And the biggest problem that they have is, since the advent of the college application, it used to be when I was going to school, you filled out 2 or 3 applications because you did it by hand, and you had to write a check for $90 to every school that you applied for. It got very expensive and very time consuming because we were doing things by hand and everything was individualized. With the advent of the common application, students are applying to many more schools, which means universities and colleges are getting inundated with applications. So they may receive 10,000 applications for 1,000 slots, and they are trying to match a student's profile because they want a student who is going to succeed and come back for a 2nd year and a 3rd year and a 4th year. They don't want to accept a student who doesn't come to the school. Colleges and universities are having a very difficult time using only the SAT to predict who they want to take. So they're looking at some other things. They're actually asking schools for performance assessments like we take in PACE. They want to see that students can use application of knowledge, not just giving back spitting back knowledge like in an SAT test. So this, I'm underscoring this because it isn't just the state of New Hampshire or the federal government that says we need a more expansive view. Colleges and universities are struggling to bring in the correct students that match the profile that they're looking for. So the snapshot that Mr. Ambrose and I took with our iPhones had 9 indicators on there. And in the draft proposal, the state of New Hampshire asked if these 9 indicators could be accepted, if it would be acceptable to the federal government if students could demonstrate meeting at least 2 of these, that they would be considered college and career ready. And you can take a peek there. Completion of a New Hampshire Scholars Program. New Hampshire Scholars Program is a rigorous course of study of college preparatory courses, and you must have a certain grade earned in order to qualify for New Hampshire Scholars. A grade of C or better in a dual enrollment college course. SAT scores that meet or exceed the career benchmark. ACT, which is a competitor to SAT, scores that meet or exceed the career college benchmark. A score of 3, 4, or 5 on the AP exam. A score of 5, 6, or 7 on the IB exam, which we do not have. Earning a career and technical education industry recognized credential. Completion of a New Hampshire Career Pathway Program of Study, something like an internship. A score of at least level 3 on components of the ASVAB, which is the military test that comprise the Armed Forces Qualifying Test, AFQT. So these are the 9 categories the state of New Hampshire has proposed. And the question was, over the course of the last 3 years, if we use these indicators, how many of our kids would have met the standard? Again, we could only do 1 year because we had to print 160 transcripts and go through them, transcript by transcript, looking for evidence of these 9 indicators. Here's what we found. In the left-hand column, we have some students who met, 3 students met 6 or more of the indicators, which is pretty amazing, 2% of the population. We had 7 students who met 5 or more of the indicators, that was 5% of the population. We had 13 students who met 4 of the indicators, which was 9%. We had 30 students graduating who met 3 of the indicators, 20%. We had 21 students who met 2 of the indicators, 14%. And we had 28 students who met 1 of the indicators for 19%. If we calculated those numbers up, you would have 50% of the graduating class having met the standard that they didn't know they were shooting for. And quite frankly, we didn't know they were shooting for. There is an asterisk there, though. There are only 8 indicators in that 50% because we learned through this process, because we didn't have some of this data, we had to outreach to our partners. In the case of SST, they were not keeping track of the number of our students who were earning the industry credentials. We've asked them to do that. So in the right-hand column, we took the students that were on target for meeting the industry standard credential, and we adjusted based on what we thought those students earned. So there were 12 additional students that would have been added to the mix based on what we compiled for evidence of an industry standard credential, but we were not able to substantiate that from SST. We've asked them to compile that in the future. That bumped up our figure to 55%, essentially moving from 74 students to 81 students. Mr. Ambrose.
I went to the How Can We Do Better box, which is where I always go, and that's that box is defined as the one that says 1 indicators. So I wanted to know more about that, and what we found out was that really, if this wasn't even a target. This is just data based on what naturally happened through all the hard work that's gone at the high school to engage students in learning. Because I was shocked combining this with the idea that if this was actually a target, that guidance was focused on getting kids to achieve, that extra 19% of students would easily have been able to do another one of the 2. So they've done 1 and they could have done another one, and that would have pushed the number up to 74% just by a little more focus. So then we'd want to go, of course, I'm not going to stop there. I wanted to know about the other 26%. So you've got a number of students that have special needs, that have met their IEPs and have graduated, so they have completed what their course of study was. You really have to look at them through the lens of their individual plan, because that's a legally mandated process. So then we're really down to about 14% of our students that didn't meet one or two of them or their individual plan for graduation based on their specific needs. Those would be the kids that we would want to identify as freshmen and guide them along this path. We want to find them early and help them to do this. So I just think it's really important to recognize that for me, this brought up the point that the relationships that teachers are making with students at Sanborn Regional School District and at our high school, and the hard work that's gone into guiding kids toward figuring out what it is that they want to know and be able to do, and giving them opportunities to do it, is paying off. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. Nothing's perfect, but this was really eye-opening, and the best part for me was when the guidance office again said, wow, we were really surprised by this when we looked at it. You know, we were surprised to see how close some kids were, and how some of those kids who had one indicator, if they had just gotten a little more on their SATs, would have had a second indicator. You know, and all those things being linked together, it really gave them, I just wanted folks to know that I really liked what came out of this process of looking at this data.
So it was well worth the work.
Absolutely well worth the work. Yep.
The other thing, I also think that going forward now, you know, we have a real opportunity to develop a system to track kids by creating an individual profile of kids. So, for example, I'm not convinced that that number of 55 in the right-hand column is it. I say that because achieving a industry standard credential, right now we've looked at that through the lens of SST, but I know that there are students here who are getting industry standard credentials outside of that SST program, right? So there is a population of students that we're still not tracking because we don't have access to all of their data, right? And so that one of the struggles that we have is we have data available in different pockets. Mr. Ambrose will tell you that I spent an entire day with information that I downloaded on one of the state's websites for Smarter Balance, and I calculated all the data, and I put what town the kids were from. I spent probably 10 hours calculating the data, but then when I doubled back to verify the individual kids' scores with the total that I knew the state was reporting proficiency, they didn't add up. And so I called the state, and lo and behold, some of the information on their website was inaccurate, and they sent me to a different website. And I had to actually go directly to the Smarter Balanced website and pull data there. So we're learning some lessons that hopefully we'll be able to learn, you know, parlay as we move forward and actually become more efficient in this. But the data collection piece is something that as a state we lack. Other states compile data like this for school districts, and you go onto the state website and you can cull information out on just about any kind of criteria you want. We don't have that in New Hampshire, so compiling this data is very laborious and requires a lot of one-on-one, hands-on, pulling data pieces out, dumping it into Excel spreadsheets, setting formulas, counting. It's quite a challenge. Mr. Baker?
The new Secretary of Ed is very data oriented. I would think a suggestion should be made to his office that he makes this sort of compilation something New Hampshire does.
Yeah, the Commissioner of Education. In fact, Mr. Ambrose and I are going to be meeting with him hopefully on Friday to discuss another issue, and that's something that we should certainly mention.
I've got a question about New Hampshire scholars.
Yes.
Could you be more detailed about what it takes to qualify for that?
Yeah, and in fact, if the board would like, I can give you the website. There's actually a website, New Hampshire Scholars. It's a program that outlines a course of studies that students who are going through a rigorous college preparatory program meet. So it will say meets 4 years of laboratory science, for example, or 4 years of college preparatory mathematics. And so what it essentially does is it creates a profile of a student who is college bound. Okay, and so essentially what New Hampshire Scholars tells you that if you take this rigorous course of studies, you will be prepared for college, because as Mr. Ambrose says, the SAT is not a really strong predictor of students' success in college. What a better success is your grades in high school. So if you can take a rigorous course of studies and pass that, it's a better indicator of success, and New Hampshire Scholars recognizes that. And there are 3 different levels of New Hampshire Scholars. There's the basic program, there's also a STEM and an arts program.
So when you say rigorous, does that mean more credits
No,
or a higher score?
no, it means the type of courses that qualify for New Hampshire Scholars. So for example, a chemistry class is considered a rigorous course, and it's considered college preparatory. Another course in science that might be an elective would not qualify. So even though you may have taken 4 years of science, maybe you only took 2 courses that qualify under New Hampshire Scholars.
So you have to take a specific list of courses.
Correct. Or there's a list that you can select from.
Right.
Taryn?
So I've got it, it's on the website, just to give a sense here. So their basic course of study, English 1, English 2, English 3, English 4, math, algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, and another competency, science, 3 years of labs, social studies, 3.5 years of a list, languages, 2 years of the same language other than English. That's one of the things. But anyways, there's a website.
Other than language, isn't that the curriculum for 4 years at high school?
No, not necessarily, because like what Ms. Lytle just said, laboratory science is different than what our graduation requirements might be. So in our graduation requirements, we have physical science, which is a lab science, and we have biology, which is a lab science, but that's it.
I'm sending you the link.
So you can graduate from Sanborn with only 2 laboratory sciences, right? So this is saying that you need an additional lab science, which means you need to take something like chemistry or physics, which are very challenging, rigorous courses, college preparatory courses.
So one more question and then I'm done.
Sure.
So in that case, where you take your 2 sciences, and then you take 1 more science, then you qualify to be a New Hampshire Scholar?
I just sent you a link.
If you can if you pass the exam?
No, so it's the complete program though, Jim. It's not just the science. You have to make the standards in all of
4
those.
social studies,
Correct.
4 English, 4 math.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, but Corey, I believe, has a question.
Oh, hi, Corey.
Hey, I was Tramella. It's not so much a question, but it's also just a statement. So I appreciate it, and I like your questions, Mr. Baker, too. But I'm not sure. Thank you again, Mr. Tramella, and the leadership team to help provide a lot of answers to these questions submitted. I'm not sure how many of my fellow board members recognize that, and community members for that matter, know that other school districts throughout our region and state are building out curriculum leadership teams with not only an assistant superintendent curriculum like Mr. Tmell, but they're adding in positions assessment to help increase the student outcomes. Take a look at Wyndham Public Schools, for example. They're not only are they also adding in a director of student assessment, but they're also adding in and bringing in consultants to talk about that student growth analysis report that you were just talking about, Mr. Tmell, about mapping it out. So again, thank you, Mr. Tmell, for pulling the weight of what other school districts are employing in multiple positions. I'd love to get more data. I'd love to get more charts. I know I am interested in that stuff. And I just understand we can only ask for so much because there's only so many hours in the day. So anyways, I appreciate where this conversation is going and where the questions have brought us to.
You're welcome. And it shouldn't be that hard. I agree.
It shouldn't be, but the state data is hard to work with.
Correct.
No, I was going to say, continue.
That's it.
That's it.
That's the last slide.
Yep.
We had 7 questions. There were, as Mr. Ambrose said, there were other questions not directly tied to the data, and we tried to focus on the data questions.
I just want to make a point that in my experience, high schools typically only require 2 lab sciences. So I just want the community to understand that that's a standard level of rigor for high school graduation. It is not the standard level of rigor for entrance into college. There's 2 separate things, right? So it's one thing, for example, if a student is attending SST, it takes up 3 hours of their day. There's no way they could fit a lab science into their schedule with doing that program and get their English credits that they need. And what their program is at SST may count towards science credit. Depends on the program that they take. It's very complicated to get everything into a 4-year program of studies and get students to get all the credits that they need to make sure that they graduate. And you do, once you make decisions as a student about the course of study that you want to follow, you do kind of set yourself up for that plan and program.
just in the old days, with us right here, used to be college prep courses. Physical science and biology are required for graduation, but they're not the college prep lab courses. Chemistry, anatomy, physiology, perhaps physics, calculus, things of that nature, where they have labs, those would be, in the old days, the college prep courses. Those are the labs that he's talking about, the rigorous labs that he was talking about.
Another example would be in the area of mathematics. The state requirement is that students have 3 years of mathematics at the high school level and 1 year of a math experience. That math experience could be a course that has mathematics embedded within it, but mathematics is not necessarily the focus of the course. But in a rigorous college preparatory experience, we would want students having 4 years of mathematics, pure mathematics.
Any other questions?
Dr. Brown?
Press the green button on the top.
I think her battery was flashing.
So things are actually improving. I pulled out the data for the standardized assessments, the SBAC and the SATs. So 3rd grade math, reading, 4th grade math, 8th grade reading and math, and 11th grade reading and math scores. And I compiled a table, and it looks like in 2015-16, 3 of those 6 measures were below state average. And now in 16-17, 2 of the 6 are below, so 4 are above state average. So these are the standardized tests, not our local PACE assessments. So things are slowly improving, although 5 of 6 of those assessments have declined since 2009.
But those are different assessments, and we have to be careful about mixing
I know
them.
they've changed
Yeah, you can't.
the measurements. So things are slowly improving, especially in grades 3, 4, and 8th grades are doing really well, and the high school is doing less well, but there was an improvement in math. So it's kind of like being an investigator. I was digging around looking at Oyster River's results because they have done really well in their assessments, and trying to figure out why we lag behind Oyster River. And I did notice that Oyster River's students to teacher ratio has been consistently above Sanborn's. We have a lower students to teacher ratio. We also have a lower students to teacher ratio than the state average over time, and yet our scores have been below Oyster River's. So I tried to understand why, and I did, of course, note that their starting pay is significantly higher than ours. So my concern is, especially in the high school, where the courses, that level of skill to teach advanced courses like physics and chemistry, we're just not attracting the teachers we need because of the critical shortage areas. I think that's part of it.
I was just going to say that I always be careful about comparing any 2 districts,
Right.
because the demographics in Oyster River are significantly different than ours. Having said that, teacher pay, I've said it from the minute I got here. I couldn't believe it when I found out that if they don't pass the teacher's contract, that they don't even get their steps. In Maine, if the teacher's contract doesn't pass, you still get your steps and your years of experience, and then later on, when they settle the contract, it gets straightened out. Here we have teachers who have been here for 15 years but are still on step 9. That is not good, especially if you're not paid at the same rate as other districts. So it might look like the starting salary in another community is higher, but when you splay that over districts, I've had teachers say to me, my friend went somewhere else and got $20,000 more a year. Not because their base salary is that much higher, but because they got all the steps that they didn't get here.
And the worst part, Mr. Ambrose, is when you're a teacher in our district and you're making a certain pay based on the fact that you're on step 9 even though you should be on step 15. But when a new teacher is hired from outside and comes into the district with the same level of experience as you are, they are placed on step 15 and you stay on step 9. So we have someone who's new to the district who's making significantly higher salary than someone who's been in the district because of that disparity.
The other thing that's happening is that we are, I have to say that having reviewed a lot of things and slowly starting to really understand the depth of some of the professional development that people have done with a very limited budget, we have done a really good job of getting new teachers up and running, and then they're taking way better paying jobs. And that is not good, because the consistency does breed an awareness of the curriculum and the assessments and the students in the community. We think about teachers learning the curriculum and the instructional practices, but there's also a piece to getting to know your community, like the Plains, or other places that I've learned a lot of things just in the last 2 months about our community that I might not have known, and that does help us to make critical decisions about how to help people.
I'm not
I know there's a
arguing
report
to
in salaries.
increase spending because we actually spend more per pupil than Oyster River. But if we could just adjust our students-teacher ratio closer to theirs and free up the money, I don't mean to sound like a congressman, but
No,
keep
it's
it
not.
revenue neutral, keep it expenditure neutral, we might be actually be able to.
What I'm
Attract
trying to
those-
do is get us back onto,
I
these
know.
are important conversations,
Thank you.
but I think when it comes to negotiation times and teacher
Yep.
contract, not to shut me down, but if we start getting off of items which are very important, we'll be here. So if there's no further question,
Yeah, I have a couple things. When during the day, and what kids have the opportunity? You said everyone has the opportunity to do the test prep through Khan Academy while at school. What grades and when during the day are they doing that?
Grades 9 through 11, and Mr. Stack might be able to give you a little bit more, but details in terms of what it looks like at each grade level. But there are 2 different times when students have available to them. It's built into part of their class time, but of course we also have the intervention block, the focused learning time, when students can be working on Khan Academy. But it is expected to be built into part of their class time, class instruction. They also have access to it because it's internet based to move on as far as they want in the evening. And I'm not sure if folks in the school board are aware of how it works, but the reason why we wanted to push grade 9 taking the PSAT is when you take the PSAT, your score, you get a number of sub-scores in addition to your total score. And your sub-scores indicate what areas you have strengths in and what areas you have weaknesses in. And the Khan Academy test prep program takes your PSAT scores and actually creates a personalized instructional plan for you to improve in your PSAT scores year to year and eventually your SAT. So all of our kids who took that PSAT, grades 9, 10, and 11, have a College Board account where they log in through the College Board account into Khan Academy and participate in a personalized instructional plan for SAT improvement. And actually, it's not a bad instructional tool for both mathematics and English and writing.
So, Mr. Stack, so for example, the 9th graders just got their scores, and now they're set up with these accounts. So what built into what subjects? When is that happening?
So the English teachers, the English teachers and the math teachers are looking at those scores, and they're going to be working with students to make some decisions about how they're going to use Khan Academy to improve those. That's the plan now. This is new for us. Remember, we've not done 9th grade before. This is brand new for 9th grade. Last year was the first year that we had 10th grade, and we were sort of testing the waters with Khan Academy. So it looks going to look different for every teacher as to how they build it in. Is it going to be every day for 10 minutes? Is it going to be a couple times a week? For 20, we kind of set targets with them that we want to see so many minutes a week, and then they're talking as a team as to how they want to divvy that up.
And that would be for language arts and for math classes.
Correct.
9 through 11.
9 through 11, correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
all right, thank
So-
you.
And so,
I got it.
No, go ahead.
For the public, could you just share how parents will know how to access Khan Academy at home? Is there an informational letter going home?
we haven't talked about how that piece is going to work yet, but I would imagine yes, that would probably make the most sense to do. And then could I add one more piece to your data discussion since I
No,
have
it's
one?
okay. It's okay. No, that's fine.
So there was an interesting article, I don't know how many of you saw it last week, from Ed Week, where they were looking at how all the states are doing and looking at ways to quantify all of the states. And anyone see that article and see how the state of New Hampshire scored on this national look? Does anyone know what number the state came in? 4th in the state, which I thought was interesting, huh? Oh yeah, right, it is the state. 4th in the country. Actually, there was a lot of New England states that were at the top of that list, and I was curious what kinds of indicators they look at when they're measuring success. And it's really interesting because they have, I mean, there are tons of data points, but they focus around student achievement and school funding. So there's a lot of interesting statistics that could be looked at from the school funding angle. I, of course, jumped right into the student achievement, and I said, well, what are they measuring for student achievement? And it's interesting. They were measuring across the country, 4th grade literacy, 8th grade math, and high school graduation rate. And I said, well, high school graduation rate, that's not a number we talk about a lot here at Sanborn. So I was curious how we did on that particular statistic. But I wasn't curious how we did last year. I was curious how we've done over the last several years. So what I did is I compared our 5-year graduation rate at Sanborn Regional High School to the state, and we are significantly higher than the state. I just want to point that out. The state 5-year average graduation rate hovering between 87 and 88%, somewhere in that. I don't remember what the decimal was. Our number, somewhere between 92 and 93%, significantly higher than the state. If you were to look at all the different high schools in the state, we are significantly higher than a lot of schools that hover around the state average. And I just think that that's important to note because it is one of our end goals, is that graduation rate. It's not good enough, in my opinion, but it's great to see that kind of info.
I think the next thing is,
I have one question for Mr. Stack.
okay,
How do you equate
sir.
the 48% proficiency in math to a 90% graduation rate?
How do I equate it?
Yeah, the state average was higher than our 44%. You're saying we're graduating more students than the state average, but our proficiency rate in math is lower.
So I think we have an issue with math and how we're getting kids to proficiency, and I think that's why we're looking specifically at not just the high school math, but even lower grades in math, because we've got to make sure that we're bringing up to them to proficiency earlier, because I mean they're two different things, so you can't compare them. But I do think that's where a big issue is that we have.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no doubt.
90% of the kids are graduating, but less than half can do math at a satisfactory level. And what's the standard for graduation? Is my question.
Well, or are we instructing them in math the right way? Like, are they truly leaving here not able to do math? What does it mean to not do math? Does it mean you can't solve a Pythagorean theorem problem on demand, or that you can't interpret data in a real world situation in life, whatever that looks like, right? So I think there's lots of definitions to what being proficient in math means. So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to get back to the presentation a little bit. So just a little anecdotal. I have a 9th grader, and just for some feedback for the public of somebody who actually just went through this process. She just got her PSAT scores, and did they meet small groups with counselors? Is that kind of what I gleaned?
That's what they were doing.
And I can tell you, for my freshmen reporting back home on this, it was a very valuable process. And the information that she got and the conversation that she had as a freshman here in January about the areas on her PSATs that were really good and the areas she needs to work in, down to as specific as if she wants to be accepted into an engineering school, she needs to raise her math by X amount of points, and a process for doing that. So that whole process that took place recently, I think it was a very positive process, and just feedback for the community from somebody who actually has a 9th grader who just went through that process.
And I appreciate you sharing that, because that's great, because like I said, this is the first time.
And I mean, she was very, I didn't say what's going, she was very interested and really happy to have a goal and a direction. So pursuant to that, my question is, with these different pathways that students can pursue to achieve success, and that they have to decide fairly early in high school kind of which path, if they're going to do, for example, get all the lab sciences in or whatever. How just really short, but when and how are kids kind of guided to make that direction? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it's inherently built in ninth grade and 10th grade by the core classes that they're taking, right? So that bigger discussion starts to happen more for junior year and senior year as kids now have more opportunities to kind of fan out the kinds of things that they do.
okay.
I mean, our ninth grade and 10th grade students are getting 2 lab sciences in those
Everybody
years.
is. And
correct.
So then it's those last 2 years where they kind of have
Yes. Yep.
to. Okay. And then just a note for everyone, we got the SAT information up here, but in case anybody wants to know, the college career readiness that the company that runs the SAT puts out for reading and writing, it's a score of 480, and for mathematics, it's a score of 530. So that's just information that the public may want, and that's readily available on the website of the company that runs the SATs. And just to the point you made early on, which is the math coordinator appears to be doing and have done great things at the elementary and middle school level. I have to echo what Mr. Broderick said, is I find it perplexing that a position that seems to be incredibly effective is not being expanded so that we have a similar position at the high school level, which is an area that is needing the help. And that continues to be a head scratcher for me, that in anything, when something is working well, you try to replicate it, you don't try to eliminate it. And that has been a persistent, troubling conversation that I've been hearing for over a year.
Okay, I think we have something on the greenhouse. Who is that?
That's why I'm here.
There we go. You're out.
That's fine. I have some counterparts behind me that may chime in too.
Mr. Broderick, I'll be right back.
Yeah. Well, it's been an hour and a half. Do you want to take?
I just need like 2 minutes.
No. Well, Jim is getting up also, so I'm assuming. Can you
Let's
give a couple
take
minutes?
2. That's fine.
Okay. No, he's going to talk about the
No, no.
Not let me leave without this because the last presentation I did, I walked out and we get stuck in there and I came back the next day to get it. So I'm doing some putting. Mr. Stack is going to run it from there.
Oh, am I pointing it there or there?
Dr. Brown's laptop.
Oh.
I just can't. I don't want to leave without.
How come it's not working?
I'll do it.
He might be able to make it. Easier.
Presentation or is that a PDF? Is that a PDF? Is that
I just brought up the PDF version.
oh yeah, so that won't work with this. We need to,
Oh, I can put it back to the original.
it needs to be in presentation
Okay,
mode.
So I think it might work now.
Yeah, no. See, right
just
now
bringing up the
it's
Google
in
Doc.
it's in a PDF.
Oh,
Do
it
you have
is
it in
still.
Google Slides? You want me to share it with you?
Let me see if I do. Hold on.
I can just share it with you.
You know what? I don't.
Let me share it with you.
Okay.
You're just in time to hear about the greenhouse.
I heard, yeah.
Funding is everything. I don't know, what is it? Oh, yeah. Fantastic. Hey, did you see that workforce development thing that we're going to be doing the PSAT. You guys may want to come over for next year.
Could we?
It's open to anybody. Just got RSVP.
Okay.
It costs a little. It's like $15 to come for breakfast. But
Okay.
no, but I'm sure she will. That'll be easy to set up. But if you or Leslie were able to come, I mean, I think it would be valuable information for you. I asked Margaret to sit on a panel discussion at it, so it should be. Yeah. I mean, it's a statewide issue. So. Yes. Yeah, don't lose Pete. Reel him in.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Corey, how are you?
I made it great. Is air conditioning. Gotta love it, you know? I'm overly dressed with sweaters up here.
Is that the last week of
It's
the
the
month?
last week of the month, but keep the board meeting on the 21st. Because just keep the board meeting on February 21st, because if I'm not here, Michelle will be here in the time.
Think she can do it?
Oh yeah, she can rock it out.
I
Look at
don't
her.
know. That's asking a lot.
She's tough.
Pete,
Alright, we'll just
Pete,
keep it for the 21st.
February
Yeah, I
break
think it's
starts
fine.
the 26th.
I'm sorry, what?
February break starts the 26th.
Yeah, no, it's, I'm looking at, do we want to move the school board meeting from the 21st?
You don't want to have a school board meeting on Valentine's Day. That would be
Well,
the
see,
14th.
that's because, see, here's my mind, I don't care. The deliberative session, in effect, is no school board meeting, right?
I just opened your.
That means only one school board meeting the 21st, but we wanted it to the 14th. Just keep it the 21st? All right, I'm happy with that.
Hey, Pete.
Yeah,
What about not having a meeting and letting the superintendent and his leadership team complete the round of stuff that he needs to do with his exit plan, district improvement plan, and all that stuff?
well, the problem with that is, Corey, is that the 7th, for all intents and purposes, that's not a school board meeting, because it's a deliberative. So we should have one that month. See?
Okay.
Just to let you know what we're talking about, we were just talking about the school board meeting because of the deliberative session, school vacations, what have you. So I'm just trying to make it so later on the meeting runs a little smoother, and it looks like we're going to stay on the 21st. I'll talk about it later.
Okay.
We'll talk about it later. I'm just, you see, the other thing is nobody knows yet, but I also got a call from the chairman of the Newton School Board, Newton Selectmen, which I haven't brought up yet. So I have information in my head that's going around that I haven't talked to you about yet. Okay. So yeah, no, we'll get to this. I'm just trying to get a smooth transition in my mind. All right, greenhouse.
Hey, thanks for having me back. All right, so some of you may remember I was here about a year ago, the first time we were talking about the greenhouse. And at that meeting, we got approval to go back and finish our study. And so we're here to kind of give you a more complete package of information. I recognize that half of you at the table were not here a year ago when we had the first conversation. So I will do my best to try to give you the most critical information without boring you. There's also an awful lot more text on these slides. You're not going to see me reading off the slides. The text is there, so if you want to go back and read stuff later, you've got something to work with, and the public as well when the resources are out there. So thanks for having me back. I'm really here to represent our staff at Sanborn Regional High School because we're really hoping to move forward with an exciting greenhouse project. For those of you that don't know, the way this came about initially is the Sanborn Seminary trustees give about $30,000 a year to our staff through what they call classroom grants. Teachers apply to do innovative projects. They are or are not approved for varying amounts up to $30,000, and they move forward and do those projects. Well, last summer, when we were moving forward to bring our proposals together, the staff said, wouldn't it be great if, instead of submitting all these little smaller proposals, we got together for a big idea. We want to do something big. We want kids to roll up their sleeves, get dirty, do something hands-on where they can apply and extend their thinking in new ways instead of sitting back and listening to someone tell them about something or sticking their face in front of a screen to learn about something. So hence the idea of bringing forth a greenhouse, and the seminary trustees loved it so much, they said, not only do we think we want to give you 1 year's worth of funding, but we would give you 2. We would give you $60,000 in an effort to try to do this project. But we want to do it right, and it would cost more than $60,000. So we started our work to do our homework with all of you. Looking to build, and again, I'm not reading off all the slides, they're here for laters, but you can imagine with a greenhouse on our facility, we could do way more than just plant vegetables in soil and serve them in the cafeteria, although there's a great benefit to doing that. We're talking about having a place where we can do all sorts of robust experiments in science. We could be looking at things in math. We could be writing and researching about them in English. We could be looking at building businesses or other entrepreneurial type things. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can go having a greenhouse site. The question is, how big of a greenhouse would you need? What kind of equipment would you need? Where would you put it? What's it going to cost? These are all the things that we had to explore and look at. And when you all met originally with us, you gave us permission to go forward and put together a more formal proposal with figures to bring back to you for approval. We're not looking to add money to a budget to purchase and build a greenhouse, I might add. We're looking to make this a community-wide project to fundraise and erect this center and make it be a real signature part of our school. So I do want to stress that. So we kind of drilled down and decided, in order to move this forward with this project, we would like to construct a greenhouse that's big enough that we could bring a classroom in there at a time to work in that space, and we would actually build all of the curriculum that would go with that greenhouse. So just a reminder what we've done so far. Back in the summer of 2016, the seminary trustees said, yes, we love this idea. We'll commit $60,000 to it. In January of last year, I was here talking to all of you about how we'd like to do this. You said, yes, go get more information and come back. In March, we finally found a vendor for a greenhouse that was willing to work with us to build the vision that we're looking for and help along the way. They're called Arch Solar in Maine, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the products they have. In the fall, we brought Arch Solar in to meet with our facilities committee. How many of you at the table were at that meeting? Jim?
I was.
Corey, and Pete, you were there too, weren't you? So yeah, so you guys can chime in when we get to some of this because you have information as well. And, not in December of 2017. That's originally when we were supposed to come back. But here we are in January because of the snow. So here we are. So Arch Solar, I'm just going to say it's a company in Maine. They do a lot of different unique projects. They came about to us because we held a community forum last February, had a lot of people from the community come out and give us feedback. Somebody in the room that day was from UNH Cooperative Extension, and the following week he called me up and he said, you know, this weekend I was in Boston at an expo and I was talking with the people from this company. They are exactly the people that you want to be working with to build your project forward. So we started talking with them as we were other vendors. What's interesting is they brought forward a pretty unique potential design for a greenhouse called a grow box solution, which is actually made from refurbished shipping containers and then a roofed structure that's put over it. You don't get the best view from their prototype, so I included, so you can kind of see from this picture the idea that you take these 20 or 40 foot long shipping containers and you put this archway over it and sides on it. They actually have some better pictures here. If you can see them, this was in Boston a couple months ago. They set up a big display at a big expo that they were doing. So that gives you a little bit of a better sense. The shipping containers provide some classroom storage area, and then you have a lot of growing area. So it's kind of a unique design. It's kind of a plug and play design because over the time, you can add more shipping containers, you can expand or change the configuration. You can put a siding on the shipping containers so they don't look like shipping containers, but in the idea of renewable resources, it kind of fits in with the theme of what this could look like. So, and again, this is just some more information from the company on sort of the advantages to having this grow box solution. And these are the actual specifics of the one we're looking at, which is a 40 by 40 unit. It's really bigger than 40 by 40 because you get, let's see if this works, Mr. Jamel. It's just a little, there we are. You get 40 by 40 feet of growing area, and then you get an additional square footage on each side with these shipping containers put in here. It sits on a cement slab. So that was one of the things that came up as we were talking about what's all the site work that would go into this, because we're obviously not just buying a greenhouse. There's more to it than that, right? So the question has come up, well, where would we put said greenhouse? And there are not a ton of viable options on this campus because without doing some serious modifications to the layout that we have currently. So really our best bet for something like this is actually right out here. So you're looking at potentially, let's use this little thing again, a greenhouse that's connected by a little hallway made out of the same greenhouse material that actually goes right into the building in what is a closet or storage room a little bit further down that way. So there's an advantage that if it's connected to the building, we can actually use it all year round because it's heated. It's not like the greenhouses you see on the farms that close down for several months of the year, which would be prime learning time for us, right? So it is connected with the building, and we're able to access some of the utilities from the building because it's part of the building, and bathrooms are in the building, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the location that was picked. It gets all the sun that we need. There's no septic system in the way. There's no storage pump tanks in the way or anything like that. It is the only thing that may change is we may have to change the configuration for graduation, although we may actually still be able to use the field for graduation, or we'd use the football field if we had to. Our teachers have done a lot of work in the curriculum integration realm, and actually I'm not going to click on it now, but if you are looking at this document later and you see where it says click here to review full curriculum integration plan, you can actually see just some of the initial brainstorming that some of our teachers have done where they've gotten very specific about how some of this would tie into some of the curriculum, and there would be a lot more added to that because we foresee this being used in multiple content areas and something that all students would access. We're not just looking to put soil beds in, although that would be a great, fantastic use of the space, but over time we would like to be adding lots of different new technologies, things like vertical gardens, hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, in-ground raised beds, solar technology. How many of you have ever been to Epcot at Disney World and gone through the land, right? How cool is that? So it's that kind of research that we would like to do on smaller scales. And Arch Solar is willing to help us over time build up to this level to be able to do this and take advantage of this space is really inquiry-based science projects, exploratory work, hands-on work for all of our students in some capacity. So now we get down to, we start talking about the numbers, right? Because I told you out of the gate, the seminary trustees wanted to give us $60,000 to get the project started. So there's a lot of different things that have to be considered. And this was the part that we didn't have all this information when we met a year ago. And it's not to say that all the information you're looking at here is even still accurate, because the problem is we've had a lot of discussions and gotten a lot of quotes, but a lot of them are soft quotes, because if you're looking for stamped engineered drawings or finalized quotes, you put in a little bit of money to get some of those. But these are pretty good numbers, and I know Jim, Jim was actually pretty instrumental in helping us pull together an Excel spreadsheet that kind of gave like a low and high range for some of these things. He had a lot of great questions over a period of about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe longer, with Arch Solar. So there's a number of different expenses in here that includes the site work pieces, the construction of the building itself and the purchase of the building components itself, as well as all of the other extra things that have to be done, like getting electrical and water out to the source. We don't need a lot of electricity out there, but there are some fans and lights that have to be operated. We don't need a ton of water, but we are watering plants, so we need water sources. Steve was very instrumental in bringing in subcontractors to kind of quote out what that would look like. The site, where's the site work and slab, that $75,000 number. I mean, that's, you know, quite literally putting a cement pad that's got radiant heat in it and is strong enough to support the weight on the sides for the structure and provide drainage. So that's a pretty complicated system. Now you look at that number and you say, whoa, 329 to 383,000, that's quite the greenhouse. I would preface this by saying we are fully anticipating and hoping that when it comes time to make this a community project, we're going to be looking for community partners who might be interested in donating some of their time or materials or expertise to help us do this. So a $75,000 site work and slab would be, assuming we're going to go pay somebody full price to do that. Our hope is that if we're really going to make this a community project, that number is going to start to go down. But that's just a rough estimate of kind of where we ballpark think we would be. And then the other question that comes up is, okay, so what do we think this thing's going to cost every year to maintain? Because that probably is something that the school district is going to become responsible for when we get to that point. So again, I know Jim was very instrumental in helping us put some of this together. So working with Arch Solar, I mean, we have some rough estimates of what we think it'll cost us to heat it and to cover electricity and cooling and some maintenance. Really the biggest expenses, and there are somewhat X factors, are supplies and staffing, okay? Supplies, we're talking about the thought that these would be supplies above and beyond the current budget that we already have, because I would argue that if we're going to be spending a lot more time in the greenhouse, there are going to be other things we're not doing. So it's very possible that we might be able to absorb supply costs just through the budget we already have. And staffing, the only reason I have a number in there is I do have a concern that when you don't have a steward responsible for the space on some level, it puts the district at risk that it goes down fast. I also worry that I would like to see this space used by the community. And if you don't have a steward who's looking to build some community programs, it's only going to be just that, a high school space. So I'd love to see us able to put together some kind of a stipend to offer somebody to be a steward for that space. And even a $5,000 stipend, when you think of what we pay stipends for other positions and other programs, we're not talking about someone who's working full-time in the greenhouse. We're talking about someone who's maybe working on it 1 or 2 hours a week for the year, or certain weeks of the year or months out of the year. So, but it's just something to consider, and it's all negotiable. I'm just sort of trying to anticipate out years after years. So really what I'm here for tonight, and then we could take all the questions that you have, is we're really at a point where we need to get, and maybe you're not ready to do that tonight, and that's fine, but we can't really do anything else at this point until we get some kind of a commitment from the school board, because the next steps from here really are, we got to fundraise. We can't form a committee to start asking people for money where it's going to be in the tune of $250,000 if we don't have some promissory note from the district that says, yes, we want this project, we're going to support this project, please start fundraising. Now, it may take us 5 years to get the money. It may take us a year to get the money. But we're going to need a fundraising committee first. We are going to need shortly thereafter a construction committee that will really handle the nuts and bolts of the construction and getting the building put up. And then we're going to need a curriculum committee, which I think will be easy to assemble with the teachers. So, but yeah, it all starts with approval when you're ready to do that. You may have more questions and we may have to come back, and I get that. That's fine. I just want to point them out while they're here. Steve Riley's been very instrumental in the facilities end of this, so I asked him to be here tonight because I was concerned that some of your questions would be way over my head, although I do a lot of work at my house. That's very different. And actually, Karen Scanlon is here. Karen Scanlon is actually the staff member who originally put this idea together and in motion. So I always say she's my silent partner in crime. But really, I mean, I'm up here talking about it. I am not going to be the one ultimately bringing this to reality. It will be a community project if our goal is to build this. So.
I think Corey has a question.
Hey, there he is. Yes.
Yeah, I got a few questions actually, Mr. Broderick. Thank you very much for acknowledging. First off, as a reminder, we've already accepted the thoughtful monies, as you indicated before, Mr. Stack, correct?
Well, not, you have and you haven't. So the money has been committed if we want to move forward with the project. However, if the district's not going to move forward with the project, the seminary trustees will probably have to decide what they want to do with it. So we have not taken a dime from the trustees, but they have committed it to us.
Now, so if we made a commitment after this discussion this evening, would there be any out-of-pocket expense initially by the school district, or are you looking to come to the table for any funds today?
No, I don't want any money at all. But at some point, when we're ready to roll out, when the greenhouse is going to be ready to go operational, we're going to have to talk about those ongoing costs becoming a budget item. But that wouldn't be for next year anyway. We're going to be a couple years out before the greenhouse is going to be operational, at least.
Absolutely. Now, as far as the show one, do one, teach one environment, this obviously really helps with that discussion and theme, for that matter. And we learned this evening, obviously, that we have students who are doing exceptional work at our SST in the automotive world. We should really be considering what we can also see happening down the road with the STEAM environment here that we might foster and harbor, or cultivate, I guess we'll say, not to put a pun on words.
Yes.
One last question. You mentioned about community partners. You mentioned about doing a fundraising committee, a construction committee, a curriculum committee. Should there really be a community agriculture committee that's brought forth today or as soon as possible with the knowns of those things being done? And this way we can start working towards like the specialty crop grants that are out there, the conservative innovation grants, and the farm to school grants that are out there.
I'm glad you asked that, because I kind of glossed over when I said we held a meeting in February for the community to get their input, and we had a lot of people come out. I should add, we had a lot of people come out from our community that fit into that category that you described, that said, oh, I'd be a part of this. We had somebody here who said, you know what, My job used to be to write federal grants for programs like this. I live in this community. I'd love to help you write some big grants for stuff like this. We had local farmers who were here who said, oh my gosh, I'd love to help you get this up and running. Landscapers Depot is a business. They were here. We'd love to partner with you. There's a lot of interest because of what you said, this whole hands-on notion, the STEAM notion. I also want to point out for clarification, we are not looking to duplicate any of the efforts that happen at SST. SST has a fantastic animal and plant program with a greenhouse that is part of their certification program. Our greenhouse, we envision all of our students are going to access because there are going to be certain programs that we do that all of our students will be in the greenhouse, whether it's learning about growing plants or doing something in that arena with it in a different discipline, they'll be there. And I also think I answered your second question wrong when you asked, was I here to ask for any money tonight? And I said no. The correct answer should have been no, but if you want to give me money, we'll certainly take it.
Thank you, Mr. Broderick. Thank you, Mr. Stacken, as well for all those.
Could we talk a little bit about the siting of the greenhouse? My understanding from your last presentation last year was, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that site of land the what was proposed for future expansion of this high school?
Yes, that is so I'm glad you brought that up. So that exactly so Mrs. Mahoney is referencing this little strip right here that goes all the way out is called a future expansion site. So what that means is they didn't put anything underneath it. If you needed to do something with the site, you'd be able to. So one could argue, see this little classroom wing here, if you ever wanted to build another one, you could logically put it there because there's nothing there. Up here, there is definitely a, what is it, like a leach field? What's it? Tanks or something like that. And then there's drainage stuff down here. So yes, Ms. Mahoney, you are absolutely right. It is considered a future expansion site, and it does bode the question, but what if we were going to use that for something else? That's not a question that I can answer because I don't know where that fits in the grand scheme of what the board is looking to do. And of course, it's your campus, your building, your plan. We had looked, the problem is when you start to look around here, where else could we conceivably put the greenhouse, right? And just by looking at this aerial map, obviously you see if the goal is to keep it close enough to the building that you can attach it, that rules out this spot, although I'm pretty sure there'd be some football players who don't want that. But everything down here goes down over an embankment. This seems like maybe it would work, but actually we have gas tanks and yep, that's all over there. This is the front of the building, so that doesn't work. And this is hilly, lots of drainage and trees. It could be, and it's also right in the front of the school. Could be used, but we would probably I would guess, because we didn't ask, but have to really dig this all up and could be a big project.
So could I just recap? What is it you want from us now?
Well, I guess what I need is, when I came here a year ago, it was the preliminary idea of we'd like to do this. We don't have all the information yet, but we don't even want to go down that road and get a lot of people involved in giving that to us until you're okay with it. And you were okay with us getting the rest of the info. So now we've done that. At this point, I guess what I'm saying is we really need to know, can we move forward and start fundraising, or are we going to do that and potentially the board's not going to be interested in supporting this project, because that's going to matter to funders. I mean, it's just plain and simple. It's going to matter to funders. It's also going to matter to the seminary trustees who have said now we're going to commit $60,000. Well, that was in 2016. So, you know, they're a nonprofit organization. They have to expend funds every so often. So they're going to want an update on where the board is at with that decision.
I'm going to give you my fly in the ointment.
That's fine. You can. You're not going to insult me either way.
I have no problem with this. My concern is that if we say go forward, which I say go forward, but that's up to the other board members, this would be probably a warrant article.
Warrant article for
the money, or would it be ruled, in other words, the school district portion, I'm gonna call it that, because there will be some expense for the school district.
But not for next
You're
budget year.
hoping- Well, my concern is we're gonna say we're for it.
Yep.
And sometime down the road, a year from now, 2 years from now,
Sure.
this ends up for some reason going to warrant. And now the people end up saying no. So we have said yes to the 60,000. We've said yes to raise money. We've said yes to, we'll give you seed money or whatever you want. But when it comes time now to actually, fish or cut bait, you might say, would it, do you perceive it going as a warrant article, or would you perceive it as something the school board would decide on? Because I hate to say it this way, school board, we would have a little more control on the agreements we made in the past.
Correct. I'm going to let.
You see where I'm coming from.
I think my understanding is we would be looking to add the ongoing operating costs to our budget.
Okay.
Because it might create issues, but I think Michelle would be the expert in this area.
You see where I'm coming from here, I think, right, Michelle? I mean, we'll give you as much control as we can control.
Correct.
But it may be beyond our control, and yet we've made commitments.
So I should specify, we are not looking for $1 to get this thing built.
Right.
We want to
Asking for
fundraise it all.
commitments. Right.
Huh? Correct. We
That's
want to fundraise it all because that's part of the storyline of bringing the community
I'm
together.
concerned people will be out there. Okay, we had a similar situation like this many years ago in Kingston when it came to the field. Down off Folleybrook.
Fairgrounds.
The fairgrounds. People bought bricks. I don't know if anybody remember. Okay, we were around.
At the
People
playground.
bought bricks. We had it all set up that the National Guard would give us work and graders, and they would do some of the work. Then Afghanistan hit, so these people made contributions. These people did things. They bought these bricks. Well, you can see it's not there through no one's control. We're talking some serious money, and beyond our control, it's possible this wouldn't come about. So I'm trying to nail some
I
issues
understand.
down now.
I think you got to hear what Michelle has to say about accepting
No, that's
donations.
fine, but I want you to have the history of where I'm coming from.
Totally get it. Totally.
Well, I think what Mr. Stack is trying to share is that their committee is kind of at a standstill at this point until there is some formal backing by the board. And by formal backing, I mean authorization for the committee to move forward and establish a fundraising group that would actively pursue raising the funds to construct this project. By doing that, they would be requesting donations and contributions and grants that are specific in nature so that the donor is dictating that those funds are for that specific purpose and that purpose only. Now that will take a little conversation in terms of how that gets structured, and we may need to reach out, for legal assistance to the Department of Revenue to make sure that all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed properly. And depending on how it's structured, if down the road something were to happen and you didn't raise enough money, or for whatever reason, couldn't build on that site and the project didn't happen, then you would be looking at tracking those revenues. They would be set aside because they're grant dollars, and if they can't be spent for that purpose, they have to be returned back to the donor. Now that's for monetary contributions. Those contributions that are in the form of service or product, you would want to get a commitment from those donors that they would participate and to what level in the future so that you build your plan. That part of it, I don't believe would require a warrant article because the donor is specifying how you spend your funds. But clearly, if the project is backed by the board and the board is giving the group the authority then to move forward to fundraise for it, we would want to get the appropriate authorities to review our thinking and make sure that we're pursuing this in an appropriate manner.
And I also see a logical 3-part process to getting this thing done. I see a part 1 of let's raise the money to get all the site work done. I see a part 2 of now let's get this thing actually purchased and put up. And then part 3 is let's get all that fancy equipment that we'd like to have in there. So I can also see things being broken into stages, because at some point the seminary is going to want their money expended, right? And we almost have enough money to handle a lot of the site work that has to be done. So, but again, we haven't purchased any stamped engineered drawings to get everything shored up because we can't spend any money. So we're giving you, at this point, I guess what I'm saying is I've given you about as much information as I think I can give you. Oh, Corey's, yeah.
Go ahead, Corey.
You're on mute, buddy.
You're on mute.
Thank you. People prefer that, I'm sure. I'd like to motion to support the creation of a community agriculture committee to assist in the feasibility and development of the greenhouse project with two requirements. One, there will be a Kingston and Newton school board member present on the community agriculture committee. And two, we will get no less than quarterly report by the committee. I've obviously typed this up.
Is that, so that's a,
I'm waiting for a second, but I think that, well, there's no second, so that motion failed. I would like, the chair would like to see a motion of just allowing you to set up a fundraising committee, which I think is basically what you're here for tonight. Is there more than what you want? Is that not what you want, or do you want more?
I worry that a fundraising committee has no guarantee that the project's going to be backed by the board. So if you're not ready to give me the backing tonight, I'm fine with that.
Let's see if Larry's formulated it.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question. I think
we all want to do it. We're just not quite sure how to do it.
And that's fine. And that's why I said you may need to research it.
Yeah.
my information, I would like to see us first talk to DRA to make sure we can do this without any problems. Two, I'd like to see a lawyer get involved to make sure that we're staying on board, not running into a wall later. Three, I think a motion is in place to have those two things happen so that we can proceed in a logical manner and get it done.
Okay. So as far as what he would like tonight, we're gonna get these two bits of information and maybe have someone formulate a motion that will, you can talk and it will,
like I said,
do what you want.
I want it when you're ready for it,
right.
But I think I'm now at a standstill. If you need to do it right, and I like the way you're thinking.
Okay, all right. So, are you seconding that motion?
Oh, no, I'm not.
Oh, okay.
So actually what I'm asking for is I think I'd make the motion that we proceed with the project with the understanding that we would get information from DRA and talk to a lawyer about the legalities of what we need to do. At that point, come back to
legalities and pitfalls?
Right.
Okay.
To find out what we need to do, how to do it, and then to set up a plan to proceed with the committees and everything.
Yeah, then we can do what Corey's asking.
Yep.
Okay, so there's your motion. Do I have a second on that motion? That we can have these discussions?
DRA is the
Second.
Department of Revenue for the state.
Yeah, Corey seconded it. Okay,
Thank you.
let's have some discussion. Well, she asked, I think she was first. She signaled me first.
So while I appreciate all the work that's gone into this plan, I'd rather defer any decisions about proceeding with a greenhouse in any way right now, since square footage around here is a scarce resource and we have real estate plans in flux. We're still waiting for the NESDEC report. We may want to build out a junior high. I love the idea of a greenhouse, but we may need that space. So honestly, I think we should defer the plans for now, even if it's for several months. I don't even want to sink money into an attorney's opinion at this point. So.
That is pretty much what I was going to say also. I'm not opposed to the greenhouse. I think it's a great idea. It's just a location. I am confused why we would be spending money on a study, a facilities use study, and at the same time then go ahead and restrict our use of the only, plot of land that we could use for expansion here when we don't even know what the NESDEC study is going to tell us. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I would also, I would also prefer to defer for now.
I've got a comment about the expenses. I worked with Tony Kiefer from Arch Solar.
Yep.
To build out these categories and these estimates. And I was glad you got the cost for the site work.
Yes.
That wasn't included.
No, that was, and we had a local contractor in that we trust very well that is very comprehensive with that.
So that was filled out. There's some other expense categories, however, that we submitted that aren't up here.
Yep.
Plumbing, for example.
That is up there, but we recategorized some things, Jim. So that's under water source and supply, actually. And we had a plumber out here.
Okay.
Yep, and Steve could speak to the specifics of the plumbing, but if I remember correctly, we hit a gold mine in the fact that we actually have the waters already stubbed out right at the end of the building. So the water would actually literally just be a matter of going down into a trench and then over to wherever it's going to come up in the slab.
The other thing was, what are you going to do with the disposal of that water? That's going to be nitrogen-rich water. You don't want to put it into septic. So how are you going to dispose of it?
Of the water that may have nutrients in it that would be hazardous or a potential concern. Yes.
It was, if I remember correctly, far cheaper to pump that out every so often. And actually, that's what we do now for the campus anyway, right?
Anything that has a holding tank, yes, we pump out. Yes.
So is there a cost associated with pumping that out, or can you make money on that water as fertilizer?
That would be something that needs to be talked about and discussed, Jim, because I think there might be some value to it.
I reached out to subsurface because I know you and I talked about it, Steve. I happen to be the health officer in town, and I reached out to the subsurface people, and they said that they didn't have really, and I'm paraphrasing, at this time they didn't have any concerns about that, because that was my concern. The nitrates and the water, and Steve and I talked about it. What about the water disposal? How does it can't go into septics and all that? I don't want to bore you with the technical stuff. But in reaching out to them, they did not foresee any concerns on the greenhouse side. Once we get further down the road, then I'm going to get into specifics. I'm not saying something wouldn't rear its ugly head, but the basic conversation I had now, they do not have concerns, perhaps not even a holding tank. I have to get more information and get more information.
I'm just concerned where the drainage would go, because there's a trough inside, as water plants or you have spillage and whatnot, where that water would go. So,
but that's included in the price quote that's already up there.
The other expense comment I have is in the original proposal that was brought to the facilities committee, there was a $35,000 consulting fee for Arch Solar.
Yes.
And that's not up there.
That's not. Yep.
That's a great question. So I removed that because, quite honestly, after talking with them about the kinds of supports that they would be providing us, we would have access to those same kinds of resources through folks like UNH Cooperative Extension that would be doing it for us as part of what they do. So I really don't feel that that's something that we need to be looking at this time. So I took it out.
And then my final concern with the expense aspect of it is, in the original work that I did with Tony, we had a construction manager in there. So who's going to oversee the building of this, and how's that going to be managed cost-wise?
So we have a plan. I guess we have a plan in place. We've been talking with a couple of people in the community that I think are looking to help us with that we've used in the past. That, I mean, I don't want to speak for them, but I don't think that we needed to put a dollar amount in for that, if you catch my drift.
All right. So then my only other concern is a somewhat large reservation about the location.
Yep.
The request that was brought to us is not just to approve the fundraising, but really to approve the construction. and that means approving the location. And I have to agree, we're spending money on a NASDAQ study. I think we need the results of that study and what the highest and best use of that location is before we can commit to construction in that location.
Well, I don't think, see, I think we're mixing apples and oranges, getting ahead of ourselves. I don't think that's part of the motion.
That was not part of the
Right.
motion.
It's
So
not
can
part
we-
of the motion,
right.
but it's part of what they're
I know, but we
requesting.
can only discuss what's in the motion.
Okay.
Those are all valid down the
Yeah.
road, I have no problem with that.
Corey's got a question too when you're ready. I'm just,
Okay, well, I was
because I
going
see,
down-
I don't know, do you
I was
see him?
going-
I see him, I didn't know.
I can
if
see,
you-
I've got him.
Oh,
right
never mind, I'll
Wasn't the
stop.
motion to proceed with the project?
Well,
No.
we've got, I know the student representative, you did have your hand up, am I right?
Yeah.
And then I've got Corey.
Maybe we can have the motion read back then, because I thought it was to proceed with the project.
No, oh, I'm sorry.
Can someone
Could you
read
hold
the
on?
motion back?
All right, no, it was my understanding, talk to DRA, right, about the process, to make sure we're doing the process correctly, and talk to the lawyer to make sure we're doing the process correctly, and any pitfalls that they may have known of. So we're not talking about any construction, we're talking about getting information which we will need when we have this discussion anyway. Right?
Phyllis, did you write?
So we're not going.
Motion is to proceed with the project.
Yeah.
Dependent
upon.
on what she just listed, which doesn't have anything to do with the location.
That's exactly right. That's what I'm saying. That you're exactly correct. I thought that's what I said. We want to go forward. Dependent on what they say, we will go forward. We're only looking for information. All right. That is all. Right. All right. So, well, hold on one second. Let's go forward. I'll recognize with you again.
I just want to comment on the value of a greenhouse program. I attended LS for middle and elementary school, and we did have a greenhouse there. It was much smaller than the one that's being proposed, but it was used heavily, especially for science classes in 7th and 8th grade. But I can understand like so many other avenues where it could be like incredibly useful, like talking about certain avenues of poetry in English class were very nature based, and that would be a really awesome resource for that. And it not only taught skills like science, but it also taught the value of hard work. We were out there working in the greenhouse and not just sitting behind desks. So I definitely think that a greenhouse project at the high school level would be really beneficial for all students.
Corey?
Yeah, I just want to remind the community and ourselves here that this will only move the district forward in the sense of enhancing the education. Number one. Number two is, if done correctly and if the curriculum is aligned correctly, more students could potentially get agricultural credit when going into college. So, I mean, I made the motion earlier about feasibility and development because that's the concerns we all have. But I obviously just think that we need to remind ourselves that it's a community project that will cost our district very little to develop, enhance the education.
Now, I haven't spoken yet. I mean, I know I have, but I haven't. On the motion, the way I'm looking at it is all we're asking for is information, which we're going to need anyway when we come to make the decision as to whether we then go forward with a committee to fundraise. So whatever we get from DRA, whatever we get from the lawyer, that's information we're going to need, so that we're not asking the question then when we're going to make the decision. We're not making any decision tonight about the greenhouse. We're making information tonight we're making a decision tonight to get information so that that information can be used when it comes to the decision of whether we go forward with the committee. Is that all right? So we're looking only for information, but there will be a cost to the lawyer, I assume. I don't know if, and DRA would probably be free.
I would suggest that Mr. Heath amend his motion. So to say that the motion is to do further research regarding the legal implications and the DRA restrictions that may or may not apply to this project, to then report back out to the board at the next meeting for consideration before deciding whether or not to move forward.
Now, okay,
Yeah.
could you want to withdraw your motion?
Well, actually,
or amend it?
I will amend it
Okay,
with,
And I accept that.
okay. Phyllis, you ready for this? Phyllis is doing double duty tonight.
I have to say that again?
Yes, you do. You think I remember it?
Oh,
I don't.
I can never do this twice. So the amendment would be to continue to explore the legal implications of building the greenhouse, particularly with regard to the DRA and contacting the lawyer to find out any pros and cons or potential pitfalls so that we can deliberate at the next meeting with more information.
Is that your motion, sir?
That is my motion.
Do I have a second, Corey?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Second.
Well, I was going to go. She had signaled me first.
Oh, I wasn't sick.
Oh, okay. Well, no, but you did before, a few minutes ago. But okay, Jim.
I'm more comfortable with that motion.
Yeah.
I think this motion is putting the cart before the horse because we're going to spend money on a lawyer, and we haven't determined a location for this project. We need to get the results of the NASDAQ study. Then we can determine a location for the project if we even have a viable location. And then we can ask the lawyer about the ramifications of doing it. But until we have a location that we're all comfortable with, that motion and spending money on a lawyer is putting the cart before the horse.
See, the way Larry got his in. The way I look at it, we're going to need this information anyway.
Only if we have a location.
Well, I agree, but I think it's information only, which we will need even when it comes to the NASDAQ study with whatever they come out if we discuss the greenhouse. So we're going to need that information.
Why spend the money until we know we can do the project?
Well, let's put it this way. We're here for one reason. We're here to get the best education we can get for the kids. And if this will work to where the children can learn a broader approach to education, what's a couple $100 to pay a lawyer to find out yes you can or no you can't? If you can't do it, you just wipe your hands and walk away. You've got the answer. If you sit here and you wait and wait and wait, nothing gets done. And if that's what we're doing, then we're just wasting time sitting here.
We're going to spend $25,000 for a NASDAQ study that's going to tell us what to do with these facilities.
And it might not say a thing about it.
Well, we can talk about this. Is there a motion to move the motion?
Move the
motion.
Okay. All right. You need to read the motion so we know exactly what we're talking about. I think we all do, but
Just don't make me say it again.
no, but Phyllis wrote it down. Okay. All in favor? Phyllis, would you read the motion, please? All in favor?
Aye.
4. That's Corey, myself, Taryn, and Larry. All opposed? That's Jim, Tammy, and Dr. Brown. Okay. Any abstentions? Obviously not. Okay, so the motion does pass.
And what I will do while you're gathering that information, even though you didn't ask me to, because I understand that concern, I would have that concern too, I will go back to Arch Solar and say, can you just take one more look at our site and see if there are other potential sites? Now recognize, if they say yes, but, the but is going to be, if you can use other sites, it changes the cost structure. So just be prepared. We won't have all the answers for what that would look like, and it could make the project not possible to fundraise for, but we can at least ask the question. So I'm going to go back with that to see what I can get you for information.
You might want to come into my office. I'll have Steve come in. Although there's 87 acres here, you are just about built maxed out because of the wetlands that you have around here. If you want to call them, fine. But I think between myself and Steve and the building inspector, maybe planning board,
Yeah.
if they're going to charge us for that, see us first.
Yep, that's good to know.
have one more comment about
Yes.
the cost factor. When Tony and I put those numbers together for the ongoing expenses, we were able to come up with the low number, but we also had a category for high.
Yep.
And we weren't able to come up with the high number.
Yep.
So these, I want everybody should know, these are the low estimates.
That's a good point.
Okay. For your annual cost.
Yep.
Operated.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, I was just ready to close this discussion out, but by all means.
Well, I was just gonna mention that we could, include this project as part of the NESDEC study if the board wanted to, and ask them to look at that in conjunction with the complete facility.
You've been trying to say something, but we didn't dare to. We didn't
That's
want to
all right,
interrupt.
No problem. Well, I tend to look at the board.
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
Well, I usually sit
and
over
I've
there,
got
but I
Corey in
can't
front
see.
of me too. And,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
that would not be instead of doing this other work, it would be in conjunction with.
I think that'd be a valuable
that'd be a
addition.
valid.
Can we have just a thumbs up on that? I don't think we need a motion
Would they,
to include that in the NASDAQ.
yeah, is that, they'll include that in the cost for the facilities examination, I would think,
Could
right?
include the thought of this
Right.
project in their review of the.
For the
facility
price that
use.
we've already approved. Okay.
I think that's a good idea.
Confirm that with them.
Okay. Okay. So we have now. Thank you, Mr. Sachs, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Just a codicil, I know the motion said the next meeting, well, we may have some information, but we're gonna be talking about next meeting between the deliberative and some other things. It may be a
Fair
little
enough.
beyond the next meeting, but I just wanna make sure that people are aware of that. Check the agenda. The superintendent and I go over the agenda every Thursday before the meetings. But it may be not possible because of deliberatives from other things. MS 27, the warrant.
Yes, actually, 3 documents here that the board has already reviewed, but they are now in their final and require the board's signatures so that we may post them. So the deliberative. One is the school board's warrant, which is the warrant articles, including the budget and the positions that are open.
That needs to be signed before we leave tonight.
Yes, and Phyllis is going to shepherd folks and make sure nobody escapes without signing it. She'll stand at the exit. And the other is the MS 27, which was also shared at a prior meeting, and this is now in its final form from the Department of Revenue. They review it and whatnot. So that lists the warrant articles in sort of a dollar format, the operating budget, the petitioned articles, and those revenue and expenses. And so that is here for your signature.
Tonight, before you leave.
Thank you. And lastly, the default budget, which is a form that the Department of Revenue requires, and that's here for your signature as well. All of these documents get posted before the deliberative and have a timeline that the deadline is the 27th of this month, and they must be posted.
That needs to be before we leave.
Correct.
Yes, so please, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Yes, Dan.
The MS 27, do we sign that, or does the budget committee sign that?
Yeah, we do.
I thought it said
Both of
school
us.
budget.
Both of us. Budget committee, but you should be below us.
You know, I think it says budget committee, so
That's my understanding.
good question. I thought it was the school committee.
No, I think it might be them because I just signed it last Saturday. But I did that as a budget committee person, not as a selectman. Yes, sir.
So the warrant.
You'll check on it if you need us. We can all get down here.
And the default budget is the board, because it's the board's default budget, the budget committee's operating budget.
And these are in the form that you emailed to us, yesterday, I think, right? Okay, thank you.
All right, next on the list, I reached out to Larry. Larry's got some real life experiences about emails, and I know Corey, you've talked about this quite a bit and sent me some emails, and you and I have talked. Maybe we're overshooting this, but want to be very proactive about emails and what constitutes meetings when you send emails and ask for all people to respond, and the fact that they can get into your personal emails if there is a lawsuit. you know, you can't hide something under grandma's apple pie recipe. They can take your whole hard drive because they want to look under grandma's apple pie recipe to see if there's any school board information there. So you want to be very careful at what constitutes a meeting. And so I asked Larry if you do a little research and kind of give us a very short but very concise and very poignant, because you can get yourself really jammed up. Corey obviously is an IT, I'm going to call you an expert, Corey, and has some experience on this, so he will chime in if he feels necessary and where he feels necessary. So Larry, if you would.
Okay. To start off with, I want everybody to realize I'm not a lawyer. I have not been to law school. And most of this that I'm talking about is either found in the RSA 91-A. And what does RSA stand for? It stands for the Revised Statute Articles. And this is Article 91-A. This is also known as the right to know law. Why is the right to know law going to be here when we talk about electronic communications? Well, it is part of that law. So before we start, I'm going to read you something that each and every one of you have probably heard at least one time. I do solemnly and sincerely swear and affirm that I will faithfully and impartially discharge and perform all duties incumbent on me as, whatever you are, according to the best of my abilities, agreeably to the rules and regulations of the Constitution and laws of the state of New Hampshire. What does that mean? That means that you have sworn that you will uphold that RSA. So this is to make sure we keep ourselves covered. Again, before I start, I am not a lawyer, so this is information that I have received or taken about from RSA 91A, the New Hampshire Municipal Association, and the New Hampshire School Board Association, the training booklets, and my own experience. The right to know law helps fulfill a requirement in the New Hampshire Constitution that government be open, accessible, accountable, and responsive to the people of New Hampshire. This is the reason why we have a right to know law. Basic requirements of a right to know law is to give public notice to board meetings. That's posted in 2 places. Allow the public to attend public meetings. Conduct deliberations and decision-making in public. Keep minutes of the meeting, including the participants, issues considered, and any decision made. And 4, and this one is in capital, dark letters, the whole bit. Avoid engaging in board business with a quorum of other board members outside of a properly noticed meeting. That's where the emails come in. What is a public record? Well, public records are any document or pieces of information that are not considered confidential and generally pertain to the conduct of a government business. All right, now we're going to get down into some important stuff. Non-public session. This is section 91-A:3, going into non-public meetings. To enter a non-public session, a motion must be made and seconded, and it must state the reason for paragraph 2 why you are going into that non-public session. The vote shall be by roll call and recorded. I repeat, all discussions held, decisions made during non-public session shall be confined to the matters set out in that motion.
Could you explain that very quickly, because we ran into that issue.
When you use a motion, there are certain criteria that you use to go into non-public session. And let's see if I can find those for you. There are 3 of them that you use. One's essentially talking about personnel matters. 2, hiring or firing a person. 3,
but I think that's okay. The point that I'm trying to bring up, Larry, is if we go in to have a personnel issue about employee misconduct, we cannot also talk about hiring someone.
well, actually, it goes even deeper than that.
Well, no, am I correct?
Yes,
You've
you are
got to stay
correct.
with what the motion says.
If the motion says we're going to go in for Article 1, which is talking about personnel, we cannot bring up contracts. We cannot talk to the lawyer about whatever else comes to mind. Now, here's the sticker. When you go into non-public session, you go in by a procedural step. And actually, we are starting to use that procedural step now when we go in. The courts, like you, this is where now I'm going on personal experience. This saved me, so I'm letting everybody know. We read exactly what it says in the RSAs, letter by letter. We even told them we went in per this number. This is what you do before you go into non-public session. Then you take a roll call. You enter into it. Then you proceed to do your discussion. If you need to, motion. Any motion or decision made requires a roll call vote again. Now, when you're done with that, you decide you have something else that you want to talk about. Guess what you got to do? You got to come all the way out of that non-public session, seal your minutes, which we'll go into later, go right back in, stating what it is that you're going to talk about in a separate conversation. And then you proceed the same way. So, can you talk about anything else? No. If you are in front of a judge and you do not have the paperwork and the minutes or the recordings, as far as the judge is concerned, you were in a public meeting and you should have been open.
And that's what saved you.
That
Why I
is
say
exactly,
saved you. The issue that you had when you ended up before court,
that
I
is
think
exactly
twice.
right. Twice. Yeah. And I can tell you that was
Why I chose him to speak on this.
This was done because the newspaper decided that they needed to have what was said in a non-public meeting, and we said no. It was non-public and it was sealed, and the judge says, "Bring me all the paperwork." The minutes of that non-public session were still sealed. They were handed to him with the minutes of the meeting.
By a state trooper.
Oh yes, and he opened them up, read it, closed the case, said, "You gentlemen are excused," and chewed out the other party. And you do not want to be, this is what I want to make sure everybody understands. When they come after you, I'll go into this a little bit deeper. You are not by yourself. It is the whole board. Anybody who is sitting in that non-public session will be in court. Because you have to document each and every participant in that non-public session. So, keep that in.
Sleep over this?
I did. You have a big sergeant state policeman coming in saying, "I want that paperwork or you're going to be arrested." And he says, "I need it now." I says, "No." I said, "I'll call my lawyer and he can talk to you." He says, "I will be in here at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Have it ready or you're my company." Well, the lawyer said, "Seal it, have him sign for it." The officer did not want to sign for it, because at that point that he is responsible for it all. But that's neither here nor there. Okay. We just talked about coming out of non-public session. That again requires a roll call vote with your yeas or nays. When you are out of the non-public session, you have to make a motion to seal the minutes. Or within 72 hours, you release the minutes to the public. I believe that's correct. Now the important
While
thing...
you're looking that up, what about, you know, my next door neighbor? What happened to that non-public last night? Oh, well, let me tell you what happened.
Let me explain something to you real quick, like, if you've been in the military has what they call a confidential, a security, or top secret. If you talk about a confidential, which is what this would be, you can be court-martialed and you can go to jail. If you talk about a secret, you are going to be court-martialed and you will go to jail. If you talk about a secret or a top secret, you're lucky to get out of there alive.
So what you're saying is,
don't talk.
Somebody comes to your next door neighbor, tell me, because I'm going to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what's going to happen. Somebody's going to come to you and say, between you and me, I'll tell you, sitting on this board, and I've been involved in town politics 15 years, you will have people who are your friends now who will not be your friends in a couple of years from now, because they're going to want you to, hey, what's really going on? And all you can say is, I can't talk about it, and they're not going to be comfortable with that. But you must not talk about anything in there. I know you know this, but I'm telling you, it's more difficult to practice it than know it.
The hardest thing to remember about this is if you're on the phone, you're talking to your friend about something, something comes up and you sit there and say, oh yeah, and you should have remembered this is what happened, and boom, you just breach security. Now what happens to that? This is my next topic. What happens if you do violate the non-public meeting? Well, for one thing, you're going to go in front of a judge. If somebody brings you up to court, the court shall impose a civil penalty of not less than $250 nor more than $2,000. Now this is just for this little bit. Let's say that what this is all about is that we're talking about a person, and all of a sudden this person is let's say a lawyer who makes $1 million a year, and you just slandered him, and it gets out to the public. Now he can take you back to court. He's already got his proof. You were found guilty of violating the non-public session. Guess what that cost you?
Whatever the courts award you.
Boom. Okay, so the best thing to do is if you get called on this stuff, don't talk. If you read up there on RSA 91-A:8, that is what that tells you. I briefed it down to just a couple words, but it goes into deep detail. The right to know law can be found at the New Hampshire RSA General Court, and it will tell you all about all this stuff. But now you come along and we got the modern day stuff. And I'm trying not to take too long here. Everybody's got their cell phone. Everybody's got their computer. Everybody sends email. We get emails from the school board all the time. I'm going to read this to you because this gets kind of, you think about it, you're going to wonder about this. This one came from the municipal school boards. So this is pertinent to us. Can emails substitute for a meeting? The answer from the lawyers are no. But telephone participation may be allowed for one or more members to participate or other electronic means if attendance is not practical, which we're doing right now. All members can simultaneously hear and speak with each other. Except in an emergency, a quorum is present at the location where the public was told where the meeting would be held. All parts of the meeting are audible or otherwise discernible to the public at that location. Again, definition of a public record. To email communication among school board members, administrators would be considered public records, assuming the email was created by a school board member or administrator. Discuss official board business. And if it was answered, it was definitely a meeting. Is received or read by a quorum of the board.
What's that again? I'm sorry.
Is received or read by a quorum of the board.
That would constitute a meeting?
It would make it subject to right to know.
Oh, okay.
Right to know.
There's a difference between that. The meeting happens if people are discussing votes or making a decision. Sharing of information becomes, so in other words, you know when I emailed you all about the snow day yesterday, and I just said, just in case you get asked, this is why I made this decision. That's not a meeting, but it's subject to right to know, and I know that when I write it. That's why I say do not reply all, reply to me only. Right? So when you hit reply, make sure you reply to me only if you have a thought or a comment, because what we don't want to do is start having discussions over email.
Oh, that's the one thing you do not want.
And if you notice, if that happens, Corey usually chimes in quickly and says, whoa, because you'll catch, it's natural. You just want to kind of respond, but just respond to me, and then I will take it from there for everyone.
There is a, in your handout, well, okay, let me go on. We apply the definition of public record to email communications among school board members or administrators would be considered public record, assuming the email was 1. Created by a school board or the administrator, discussed official board business, is received or read by a quorum of the board. Note, must be stored as if it was paper. This can be stored up to 10 years. Second concern, school board must consider when using email, does it constitute an illegal meeting? The Attorney General for the state of New Hampshire, I think I have it in here, if I can find it. Yes. The New Hampshire Attorney General's office offered this statement regarding email used by a public body and whether or not such communications are considered a meeting under the right to know law. Email use should be carefully limited to avoid any inadvertent meeting. One where there is a failure to have a physical quorum at a notice meeting place. Simultaneous emails sent to a quorum of a public body by a member discussing, proposing, action on, or announcing how one will vote on a matter within the jurisdiction of the body would constitute an improper meeting. Sequential email communication among members of a public body similar should not be used to circumvent the public meeting requirement. So the next one is just an example of what to use. So when we use emails, we have to be extremely careful. There's another one here. What type of email communications are permissible? Sounds like almost none are, but here's what the Attorney General states. Emails among a quorum of members of a public body, any manner that does not constitute contemporaneous discussion or deliberation, that does not involve matters over which the body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power, does not technically constitute a meeting under the right to know law. RSA 91-A:1I. Examples of a possible sample of such a draft document. Examples of such samples. This is the draft document of contracts, reports, budgets, and etc. It also states that no deliberation or discussion or decision. Additionally, certain emails contain informational discussions only are likely allowed. Again, likely allowed. And these examples of these type, agenda of the next meeting, meetings that have been rescheduled, and such things. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of my little talk.
I had one more piece of information for all of you. Just, you don't have to read this now, and we don't have to discuss it, but I got really nervous after when we started talking about this and some conversations with some administrators about cell phones. So I went
Why
out.
this has all come about
I
now.
went out and got. I have a district cell phone now. It is not. It has nothing personal on it. It has phone numbers for you all. It's the only number that I'm using for district business. Maine doesn't have a law that's quite as extensive as New Hampshire around right to know. So I just felt like that was the right thing to do to protect me and you from having to deal with possible litigation around cell phone use. But I did ask for a legal opinion on cell phone use. I'm just sharing this as an FYI for you to read later. It's not, it just basically says that even if an administrator doesn't accept a stipend for a cell phone, their cell phone can still be subpoenaed. Right? So it's just giving us, it'll help you to know what the rules are around your personal cell phones.
I think we all have that.
Oh, do you guys all have a copy of this?
Yep. Yep.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any questions or anything? I mean, I hope you understand why we took this few minutes to do this. I was somewhat dismayed with some of the things it took. Because, I mean, Larry did nothing wrong. He got jammed up in court twice. Right? You know, I had one. Luckily, it only went to investigation. Didn't go any further. And I will tell you now, when the investigation was over, they didn't say I didn't, it wasn't just me, but didn't do anything wrong. All they said was there's insufficient evidence to continue at this time. You know, you'd love to have the police or the investigators say, oh, you didn't do it. No. So now everybody out there say, well, he still could have done it, you know. So you really want to be careful on this stuff, because I will tell you right now, even if you don't go to court, only when you go to court can they say he didn't do it. If you don't go to court, the end of last sentence will be insufficient evidence at this time.
And they can bring it back up.
Oh yeah, but the point is, it doesn't tell the people out there that he didn't do it.
Nope.
And in fact, if anything, maybe we have a found anything. There could still be. I'll tell you, folks, it's going to be very interesting sitting on this board. You wonder why we can't get people to run for public office, right? Each one of us, your home computer, if there's an issue, they're going to take everything in it.
Oh, that reminds me. I just wanted to tell you that I did have a conversation with one of the folks that I consulted around this issue. And the lawyer said that the place that people get into trouble the most is if you start using your home email to do school business. So you know how when you type in someone's name, it just kind of comes up quickly. I sent an email from my home email once by accident, and I quickly resent it to my school email, right? I fixed it and sent it and forwarded it to my school email. There's nothing to hide in my email, but if y'all want to know when my doctor's appointment or a medical issue, I mean, you could, but I just don't want people going through that. It's not fair or right, you know? So, I mean, it's like Facebook.
Once you did that by mistake,
well,
it's now open.
It could be, but I would say that's a stretch. But I would just be very, very careful about using your home email address for anything that's school business related, right? So if the other piece is that I didn't know this until I dug into it a little more. It was good learning for me, is that for you all as board members, it's very important for you to remember that no matter where you are, what you do, or where you go, you are a school board member. And if you're discussing school business with other people, you are liable for that discussion should things go wrong. That is very important for you to know. I didn't realize it went that far. So in other words, if a parent is complaining, let's just say I got an email yesterday from a parent who was rightfully very frustrated that we changed the 2-hour delay to a full day of school being off because the temperatures dropped more instead of going up. Not a problem. If that person comes to you, you would refer them immediately to me to protect yourself, not because the snow day complaint is a problem, but any complaint about the schools, as board members, you should forward them to myself and or Pete if it's about me. So the complaints should come to me, and if it's a complaint about me, then it goes to Pete, and then Pete and I can talk about it. There has to be a process for me too. I'm accountable just like everyone else. But it's so important to remember that when you're receiving information about complaints, the proper chain of command is to refer the person back to the superintendent, who then brings it to the chair for consideration by the school board. If you don't follow that protocol, you could be liable. And I didn't realize the gravity of that notion that is exactly why Chair Broderick said many people sadly won't run for office. I mean, all of schools have become such a legal quagmire at this point that it's really difficult to just teach the kids the things they need to know.
Just another piece of information that may be helpful to you down the road. Someone makes a complaint about the superintendent to the board, and we have a non-public, and we do something, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. We can't tell the people, oh, by the way, we found him wrong and we wrote him up. Because now you're giving information as if he was guilty and you've taken away some of his due process. So the terrible thing is, a couple of weeks ago, I had, a number of us were there, another cover-up by the school board. We can't tell you what we did because that employee has certain rights. So we can only say, we addressed the issue. Because if I say, yeah, we wrote him up and we gave him 6 months suspension, and then we found him guilty without his due process. So you got to be, and it's awful because you've got to say to people, we discussed that issue. We can't even say we resolved it. We discussed it. That's about all I say. You got to be careful about that.
You can't even say that you discussed it.
Right,
You can say, I heard your concern and it's been turned to the correct person.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not thinking as I'm going. I'm telling you, folks, you stay on this board longer, you're going to have an interesting ride. Larry?
Yes, one more thing. What I've been saying is this is for the school board, but actually this is for any elected official in the state of New Hampshire.
Yep.
And it's not only elected, it's also appointed. Any elected or appointed official.
How about people who volunteer certain committees?
They are also under the jurisdiction of 91.
So our facilities committee that we talked about, this is good for me to know, is that those folks are bound by the same guidelines because it's RSA.
Is that true for the seminary?
Yep.
I would assume so.
It is for.
You wonder why we can't get people to volunteer anymore.
That's
I don't
why.
think that's the reason.
Well,
no, I mean, but it does make it hard.
I've
heard.
But that's one, and also
That's the scary stuff you find out after you volunteer.
When you're standing before a judge.
that's not fun.
Okay, so I think Larry, you have one last thing, and then we'll go on.
Actually, the last thing I have to say is that the best way to say when you're having coffee and somebody asks you a question, yeah, I've heard that, and thanks for the information. I'll keep that under my hat and find out what's going on. And
Or I'll pass it on to the appropriate person.
Or that.
Right.
In other words, don't talk, don't say anything, change the subject and go to something else.
I had a phone call today, had to do with the selectmen, but all I could say to them was, yep, thank you, sir. Now, I'll see what I can do to address the issue. Boom,
I'll tell you
so much for that. I'll tell you, it's going to happen, folks.
Standing in front of that judge.
Okay, school board meeting. The next one will be the 21st of February. We will be at the deliberative. Please come in around.
Wait, no, the next one's February 7th.
That's what I'm going to say. The next one's The next one's the deliberative session, but I'm talking the actual school board meeting here. We are at the deliberative session. Question is, we would like you to come in a little bit early because we have those things to sign. Do you any idea what time you think is a good time to come in early? We will start the meeting in here and then just go to the stage. I don't foresee any issues. You want to get here 6:30 and just start the meeting, sign the manifest and things, and then move on. Does that sound like a plan?
At 6. It says in here that the meeting's at 6 to 9.
We just do 6 as we normally would.
Well, that 6 o'clock is the normal, but that's February. But the deliberative starts at 7. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we get here 6:30, we'll just sign the manifest, call the meeting.
We have to go through the line to get our ballots and such, right? So,
Whatever you want.
I would say the earlier the better.
6? Okay, so it'll be 6 o'clock. Oh, so all right. So we'll keep 6 o'clock. I'll just trying to give you one. Okay, the meeting after that will be the 21st. I was going to put this under other business, but I'll talk about it now. Sorry, student council rep, but I've got to talk about this anyway. I got a phone call from the Newton chairman of the Board of Selectmen. I haven't returned his call because I wanted to talk to you. First, I want to know what he would like to have for an agenda, but looking at the calendar, we meet the 21st, all right, because we don't meet the 7th, we don't meet the 21st, well, we meet the 7th, but you know what I mean. The 21st, next one, that's probably going to be a full agenda, and the superintendent won't be here.
Possibly.
Possibly, all right. So that moves us to February 4th. What's your feeling?
March 4th.
I'm sorry, March, no, yeah, my mistake. March 4th. No, March 7th,
Yes.
right? March 7th.
Wednesday.
So what's your feeling on having March 7th, the selectmen, if they're agreeable to that date, coming in?
And that's a regular school board meeting.
Yes, we go to enough meetings.
Okay.
Well,
Yes.
unless you would rather meet with them a different time.
No, I'm just verifying that they would come to that meeting.
Well, that's because I thought that was the feeling of the board when we first talked about it.
I'm all for that.
Okay.
That's not my feeling. I'm willing to have a meeting with just them. Because we're talking about community.
I don't even know what the agenda's about.
Right.
All right. I haven't returned the call because I wanted you people to say, yeah, this is the date we would like to have. So I'm going to say either the 7th or the 21st of March. Is that all right with you? I mean, I don't want to just give them one day in case something happens. And it'd be at 6 o'clock, regular school board meeting. We'll have them on first so they can leave afterwards. All right. Everybody okay with that? Anything else I want to say? Okay. All right. So that takes care of it. Student council.
So Mr. Ambrose covered some of it with the winter carnival aspect, but there are some other things happening. This Friday is the annual winter semi held by the senior class. It's happening at Austin 17 House in Brentwood, who have been a big partner with us as a school. So we're really excited about that. And then additionally, National Honor Society is doing a book drive, both children and adults books. And I took what I think Mr. Ambrose had said about how at the elementary level they need classroom library books. So we will be donating all of the children's books that we get to classroom libraries in our district. So, and that's Bakey Memorial, but also Ellis and the middle school, should they want them. And Spanish Honor Society is working on a drive to fundraise items to send to Puerto Rico after the massive hurricanes that they had there in the fall. Also, student council is wondering if you guys, like we did last year, are interested in having a babysitting service in the library during the deliberative, so that parents can drop off their children and then go to the deliberative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could we make sure that goes out on the internet? The school paper, or?
Sure.
I will talk to Ms. Price and the student council. And keep on about everything too.
Yeah. So just see me or Phyllis, and we'll make sure to put it everywhere we can.
Okay.
That it?
Yep.
Okay. Other business. Anybody have other business other than what's posted here? Okay. The meeting for the next. Anybody have anything for the agenda for that would be the 21st, by the way. Okay. The superintendent and I always get together. We'll send out what we do. Okay. So announcements. The next Sanborn Regional School Board meeting will be held as part of the deliberative session on Wednesday, February 7th, 2018, from 6 to 9 p.m.
From 7. It's at 7. Remember, Phyllis said there was a typo.
Oh, there's a typo. Oh, who typed this up?
We're going to meet from 6 to 9 as a
Yes, we
school
will be
board.
here at 6. Yes, but that is correct. We will be here. It's the next Sanborn Regional School meeting. Right. We will be here at 6. Yep.
Just didn't want to confuse people.
Yep. No, that's good. All right. So we will meet here at 6, ladies and gentlemen. But then we'll sign manifest everything, and then we will go to the deliberative. Sounds like a heck of an idea. Okay. All right. Okay. So so we're going to meet 6 to 9. Deliberative. Everybody understands that. In the auditorium, Sanborn Regional High School, 17 Danville Road. Okay. The filing period for positions for the Sanborn Regional School Board, the Sanborn Regional Budget Committee, and the District Moderator will be opened on Wednesday, January 24th, 2018. What is today?
Today.
Today. Okay. and end on Friday, February 2nd, 2018 at 5 p.m. The candidate filing forms may be obtained at the SAU office. The SAU is this office here. If you don't know what SAU is, from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. The school district clerk will be available on the last day to file from, I guess it's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Another little error there, but that's all right. At the SAU office, located on the second floor of Sanborn Regional High School, 17 Danville Road. Basically, if you're interested, get down here, go upstairs. They'll be more than happy to help you. The first deliberative session for the annual school district meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 7th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium at Sanborn Regional High School. Snow date is February 8th, 2018. The second voting session of the annual school district meeting will be held Tuesday, March 13th, 2018 from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Swayze Gymnasium, Sanborn Seminary campus for Kingston voters and in Newton Town Hall for Newton voters. Now, what is that? The deliberative session is the deliberative session, and please, ladies and gentlemen, be there. That's where you can stand up, make amendments, motions, right? The actually what people call the election, even though it's not really, is down in Swayze Gym here in Kingston or the Town Hall in Newton. That is in effect where you verify what changes and motions and amendments were made at the deliberative session. So, please, the deliberative session is where you want to go if you want to make any changes, right? So please be there. There's like 6,000 voters, and we might get 300 people. It always drives me a little interesting. The town, we have 4,000 voters almost, and we get 30 people. Unless they think we're doing a great job, I don't know. So, just so you'll understand, again, I'm going to say it. First deliberative session, Wednesday the 7th of February, here, 7 o'clock in the auditorium. The second voting session, that's where you go down and you mark the boxes, who you want to vote for and everything, right? That'll be at the gymnasium, at Swayze Gym, at the old seminary campus, or at the Newton Town Hall. Okay, I don't believe we have any non-publics. I don't see any here. Any other information, requests, talk, discussions? If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Larry, you always make that motion.
Hey, I like that motion.
Wait a minute, I think we'll give Corey credit for that one. He's got his hands up in the air. All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous.